Board of Supervisors and the Redevelopment Authority to order. Today is Thursday, March 3rd, 2016. It is 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center at Sierra Room at 851 East William Street. I believe we're also streaming on the city website. Or what?
As well as on the internet.
It's on the internet, okay. And yeah, and we're on cable too, I think. Okay. Can we call on Lewis Locke, Fountainhead's Foursquare Church to please get us started?
Roll call first.
Roll call, I'm sorry.
We got to make sure we're all here first.
Yeah, okay. Roll call. Oh,
Good morning.
yeah.
Supervisor Abad.
Here.
Supervisor Bonkowski.
Here.
Supervisor Bagwell.
Here.
Supervisor Shirk. Here. Mayor Kroll.
Here.
Mayor Kroll.
Now we'll get on to the important part. Lewis, come on.
Thank you. Let's pray together. Oh God, we give you thanks and we give you praise. Psalm 147 tells us, worship Him, and those who put their hope in His steadfast, unfailing love. Lord, help us not to trust in our own strength and abilities, but in yours. And we thank you for your love and mercies that are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I pray for your blessing on the people of Carson City, on our supervisors and their families, and we ask for your wisdom in the consideration and decisions that will be made today. In the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much for getting us going on Friday. Could call Carol Howell to lead us in the pledge. Come on up, Carol.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now take up item 5, public comment. Anybody want to have public comment at this time? We'd have it. Yep, come on up.
Good morning, is this on? It's red, no, okay. My name is Hope Tingle, and I have a couple of comments to make, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. The downtown Carson Street makeover project seems to be a gamble that assumes more people will come to the downtown area, which in turn will generate more revenue. Bringing more traffic to a specific area while reducing the lanes of traffic by 50% makes no sense. Typically, as growth occurs, municipalities are forced to expand the traffic corridors, not reduce them. Vehicles moving in and out of parking spaces into a single lane of traffic will only make the situation worse. This restriction could also impact the response time of emergency responders. Currently, there is a significant number of people residing north and south of the affected area who are simply traveling to work, going to eat, various and assorted things, and they will be impacted and inconvenienced by this development. Circumventing this project area will only add to traffic congestion on Stewart and Curry Street and increase commuting time. Most importantly, the existing road is functional, aesthetically pleasing, and has already been paid for with taxpayer dollars. A large percent of the $10 million+ will simply be wasted on removing water, sewer, and electrical lines, lighting fixtures, sidewalks, roads, landscaping, etc. Aside from payroll taxes, those demolition costs will not generate $1 of revenue to the city. If it's not broke, do not waste additional taxpayers' money to fix it. There's no guarantee the project will achieve its intended outcome, and the cost to restore this section of Carson Street back to its original 4 lanes will be extremely expensive and most likely irreversible. I do not agree with the board's decision to approve a zoning variance without providing justification and sufficient written notification to adjacent and nearby property owners. This relates to Silver Oak development. Approval should be based on criteria such as the variance reduces the city's maintenance or operating costs, reduces water usage, reduces vehicle congestion, removes areas of blight, addresses certain health and safety issues, and I'm sure there are many more items that could be addressed in a variance. There needs to be some basis for making the recommendation, and this needs to be provided to the public in written form and disclosed during the course of the meeting. The decision should be based on its benefit to the residents of Carson City and/or surrounding neighborhood, and not simply that it's more profitable for property owners or the developer. I was not in attendance at the board meeting regarding the Silver Oak apartment complex, so I'm assuming this type of rationale was presented and discussed at the meeting prior to board approval. Many of the owners residing in Silver Oak subdivision expressed their disapproval of the variance due to the lack of conformity with the surrounding neighborhood and insufficient notification. On a per-acre basis, this variance will result in an increase in congestion and water usage, as well as generate more wastewater when compared to the usage originally intended for this property. A variance allowing for single-family residences would have been more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and more readily accepted by the local residents. If this option was not discussed at the initial meeting, it should have been. Without some justification for granting variances, I feel the board is setting a precedent enabling other property owner or developer to build high-density complexes in lieu of what the property was initially zoned for. If every request for a variance is granted, what is the point in developing the initial zoning maps if they're always going to be subject to change? Hopefully the city has zoned specific areas of the city as being suitable multifamily units. I personally do not agree with the downtown project or the Silver Oak apartment project. I'm also not in favor of the Lampa or Schultz Ranch development, but that's a personal opinion as well. I feel certain members of the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors, and elected officials have elected to vote in favor of certain business owners' interests in lieu of what may be the best for the majority of the Carson City residents. I thank you for your time. And my last name is spelled Tingle.
Thanks, Hope. By the way, your nephew did a good job the other day at the Nevada NJROTC drill.
Isn't he just the best kid?
He's the best.
I just love him.
He's the best. Thanks, Hope. All right. All right. Any other public comment? Anybody? I don't see any. Okay. Let's take up then item number 6, possible approval of the minutes. Everybody had a chance to look at them? Go.
I move to approve the minutes of January 21st, 2016 as presented.
Yes.
Kathy, there was one.
Yes, one correction to
Okay.
page 4, which was made before the meeting, and I emailed the board.
Great.
Everybody clear on the motion? On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, on the agenda, any changes?
No change.
You sure we're not taking a few off?
Whatever the pleasure of the mayor would be.
Oh, okay, well, I haven't heard that one for a long time. I'll take that one, yeah, okay. Anybody, any board members, changes? If not, then unless there's an objection, we will take the agenda as published and we'll adopt it as published then. Let's all adjourn down to the floor, and is Nikki here? Who's doing Nevada Moves again? Oh, come on out. Okay, Courtney's here. Come on, both of you, come on.
We on?
Oh, kind of done it, okay. All right, everybody moving around? I think we're done, okay. This is a proclamation for Nevada Moves Day, March 2016. It reads as follows: whereas encouraging children and youth to walk or bicycle to school develops lifelong habits and whereas the benefits related to physical activity play a crucial role in reducing rates of heart disease, diabetes, and other obesity-related health problems among children. And whereas children walking and bicycling to school together with parents and caregivers opens opportunities to mentor children about pedestrian and bicycle safety. And whereas adequate physical activity has been shown to lead to improvement in children's academic achievement. And whereas walking and bicycling to school offers an opportunity to build physical activity into both parents' and children's daily routines. And whereas active transportation modes like walking and bicycling have a positive impact on both the environment and a community's sense of place. And whereas children, parents, and community leaders around Nevada are joining together to walk and bicycle to school on Nevada Moves Day on March 16, 2016. Now therefore, I, Robert Kroll, Mayor of Carson City, do hereby proclaim March 16, 2016 as Nevada Moves Day in Carson City. I encourage citizens to be active and to walk or bicycle with their children to school while celebrating the benefits of increased safety and health this day and throughout the year. Thank you. Okay. All right, you want to talk to us about Nevada Moves Day?
Sure.
Okay, Courtney, go for it. There you go.
Courtney Bloomer, Carson City Health and Human Services. I'm the coordinator for Western Nevada Safe Routes to School. I want to take this opportunity to thank the board for supporting the Safe Routes to School program and Nevada Moves Day. We've been celebrating this particular Nevada-specific day for several years now here in Carson City, and this year we are excited that all Carson City elementary and middle schools are taking part. Carson Middle School will be celebrating their first Nevada Moves Day with us this year. The program, of course, is regional, and we have 22 schools participating in total, so we're very excited about that. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank the board for everything you've done to improve active transportation for our kids and for our community.
Okay, Nikki, anything? Couldn't say it all.
Courtney's covered it all. She does a great job with the program, and thank you for all your support.
She moves right along.
She does, and quickly.
All right. Let's get All right, we'll now move on to item number 9. Has everybody had a chance to look at the condition of the 9A, the conditions of each fund in the Treasury? Anybody want to hear from Nancy? Public, anybody want to hear? Motions, not that we don't, but a motion's in order. Okay.
I move to accept the report on the condition of each fund in the Treasury and the statement of receipts and expenditures through February 19, 2016 per NRS 251.030 and NRS 354.290.
Motion, a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion, hearing, and seeing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thanks, Nancy, very much. Okay.
Okay, I have a disclosure on the next one.
Okay, we're going to move to item 9B, community development block grant issues. We have a couple disclosures while they're getting set up, so I know we'll go to Supervisor Abad, then Supervisor Bagwell.
Per NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when necessary. I serve on the Harvest Hub Board, a nonprofit organization. The Ethics Commission has opined that on issues related to funding, a public officer like myself who volunteers on a board of a nonprofit has a commitment in a private capacity to the interests of that organization. Therefore, a reasonable person in my situation would be materially affected by this commitment. As such, I will be abstaining from participating in this matter.
Okay, Supervisor Bagwell, go.
Okay. NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from participating when I have a disqualifying conflict. I serve on the board of directors for FISH, a nonprofit organization. Nevada Rural Housing has applied for funding on its application. It mentions FISH as providing training and transportation to Nevada Rural Housing clients. This is a service that FISH normally provides. FISH will not be receiving any of the funding that Nevada Rural Housing may receive from this application. Therefore, because this is not a disqualifying conflict of interest, I will be participating in this matter.
Okay. Any other disclosures, disclaimers? Okay, I don't see any. Go. Janice, go.
Janice Keeler, Grants Administrator. I'm here with Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director, and Chris Wickstead, who is the Chair of our Application Review Work Group.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. So this item is for possible action to allocate the Community Development Block Grant CDBG funding for fiscal year 2016-17 and to open a 30-day comment period from March 3rd to April 1st for a review of the Carson City Draft CDBG 2016-17 Annual Action Plan. to implement the Department of Housing and Urban Development CDBG program. So we were advised of our HUD allocation last week, and so we revised the spreadsheet to show the change. It actually went up a little bit from 349,000 to 368,000, roughly. Here's the distribution of those funds. So the CDBG program, I don't know if you want me to do a little bit of an overview of it. So it's a program through HUD. CDBG provides funds for low to moderate income people. Carson City is an entitlement community, which means it's over 50,000 people, so we automatically get this funding. So Carson City has to distribute it how, our community sees fit. And the way we do this is we have a citizens group called an application review work group with volunteers. This year we had 6 volunteers. February 11th we met, we had an open meeting. The public could attend, and our work group reviewed the applications, interviewed the applicants, and made recommendations. So their recommendations are on the spreadsheet in yellow on the left. And
Can we ask questions as we go?
yeah, if you're ready for questions,
Can I ask, when the selection made for those who serve on this, who makes that selection and how are those citizens brought to the selection committee?
I make the selection based on recommendations. It's actually pretty hard to get volunteers. What I've done in the past is I've gotten graduates from the Carson Leadership Program, which is done through the Chamber of Commerce. Those graduates, they're in that program because they have an interest in the community in Carson City, and so they tend to be more interested in getting involved in something like this. So, and I talk to people, and most of the time, they are interested. And so if it seems like they could make the meetings and do the work, then I invite them to join it.
Has it ever been considered to have a board appointment as we do with the charter and other committees as well? Has that been considered?
I haven't considered that, but if that's something you guys would like to do, we can talk about that too.
Would that have to be an agenda item, or how do we talk about it?
Yeah, I guess it would have to be an agenda item.
So would I need a second, or would that be a city staff agenda item coming forward
I am not sure.
for board appointment to this group?
Maybe the DA could answer that.
You would, this is an administrative staff level committee, so if you wanted to make a advisory committee, then you would have to add that to your list of committees, and that would have to come up through the city manager, and it would have to be agendized, and you would have to have all the requirements set out, just like you do with other committees. But that's how you would do it. But this is basically something that falls within the department and the duties of the department. And so if you wanted to do that, you would have to go through that process.
I can expand. Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. So right now, the citizen participation plan, we're following that process that's in the action, in our 5-year consolidated plan that goes to HUD, and also what you're talking about today and will in a couple months is the action plan that you send to them every year. It's also in that action plan. So perhaps at that, when you adopt the action plan, the public participation plan is part of that. So if you want to discuss, I think that'd probably be the appropriate time to discuss any changes to that for future years. So, so that will be on the agenda in a couple months for the final action. For this year, obviously, we're not going to go back, but if you want, but I think that's probably the proper time because it's in the action plan that you'll be approving. Okay.
Thank you. I was just looking ahead. Thank you.
So we had a total of 10 applications. We had 5 for public services, 5 for public improvements, and as always, there was more requests than funding available. So the application review work group had to make some tough decisions and really, filter through what the city's needs are and then base their decisions on that. So Another thing they used for their decisions is the priority needs table, which is also in your packet. It describes our community development needs, and this is also has been adopted into our consolidated plan, so we try to follow this as closely as possible when we make our recommendations. I believe at this point you can ask questions, you can discuss the recommendations, make changes if necessary.
I don't know if the board has it right now, but I think you want to, either you or Chris, you want to say who's on your committee, who the working group was? So go.
Thank you, Mayor Kroll. For the record, Chris Wickstead, Application Review Workgroup Chair of the CDBG and CSSG Grant Committees, Carson City resident, property owner for 14 years. My role today is to represent our citizen committee reviews of the many grant applications received for the 2016 CDBG Public Services and Public Improvement Projects. Every year our role is to prioritize the most worthwhile services and improvements, and it becomes more and more challenging every time. However, thanks to this board and especially the Planning and Finance Department's hard work, we have a vastly improved application and review process that we were able to use. This year our role was to prioritize and recommend the public services grants amongst 5 groups despite requests outpacing funds by at least double, and to recommend the best investment in 5 possible public improvement grant requests, looking for nearly 4 times the available funding. We're fortunate here in Carson City to have such a hearty and energetic group of citizens helping us out on the committee. For carefully reviewing and evaluating each of these grant requests, I'd like to give a big thanks to L.A. Avila, Robert Glenn, Rob Joyner, Carol Howell, and Craig Steele for participating in the process. There are many hours of hard work enabled a robust list of recommendations for you all today. And I'd also like to thank Janice and Lee for establishing and maintaining a rock-solid process and framework for the reviews. So thank you.
Very good. Okay. You want to go through?
Okay, so what we have recommended for $32,103 is Ronwood Family Resource Center Reach Up program. And that program serves youth up to age 17. This program has been funded in the past probably about 5 or 6 times. It's been an excellent program, a need in Carson City. They just do a lot of programs. Joyce Buckingham isn't here today, but when she did her interview, she was trying to describe 18 programs that they do. This is one of them. It's been a really good program. They serve a lot of people, so I really think for the amount of money that they're receiving, that they do a lot of work with that. The second recommendation is Food for Thought, and this is for their Summer Food Bridge program, and they've typically been funded out of CSSG. They're requesting $12,000. We're recommending full funding. This program takes place in Park over by Empire Elementary School, and they just provide free lunches for the kids during the summer in a low to moderate income neighborhood. The third agency recommended is the ESL In-Home Program of Northern Nevada, and they provide in-home language education to non-English speaking people, try to get their status as a citizen and just various other activities. They asked for $30,000, but due to the lack of funds, we were only able to give them $11,174. And Nevada Rural Counties RSVP, that is also a very good program. We just felt with the lack of the funds that they might be better funded out of CSSG. And Big Brothers Big Sisters, Chris, do you remember this one specifically?
Yeah, Big Brothers and Big Sisters is also a wonderful program for Carson City, and they've participated in, I believe, approximately 20 big and littles for the local area and community. The dilemma with Big Brothers and Big Sisters, first was the priorities of the 5 for the committee, and secondly, it's challenging for us because Carson City isn't able to get as much attention from Big Brothers and Big Sisters as, like, say, Reno, where they have nearly like 400. We would like to see Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Carson City. Again, I think the first thing was the priorities here, trying to fund the top 3.
And I just had something to add to that. They were partially funded last year through the CSSG, the youth part through Partnership Carson City. So they we'll most likely be applying for CSSG again. And then moving down to public improvements, Clear Creek Bowman Parks and Recreation applied for, it was ADA improvements at the Centennial Park Archery Range, and we recommend full funding for this project. It was something that we felt was needed in a city facility. There was no access down to the actual range, and so anybody in a wheelchair could not get down there. So we recommended that for full funding. And then second was Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and they applied for a training center as part of their Janelle Drive supportive housing development project, and they almost received full funding, just short of that. So we felt that was a need in our community. The Janelle Drive supportive housing project is going to be housing low-income people, and this training center will help to get them some skills so they can go out and get a job. And we felt that was important, not just to house them, but to train them. The Carson City Public Works Department applied for road improvements on Nichols Road, and the committee felt that it was just serving one street. It wasn't really serving enough people to really make it worth that amount of funding. The Harvest Hub, we felt, wasn't quite ready at the point that they're in right now to receive CDBG funds. Maybe next year they would be more ready for that. And then the Carson City Fire Department, we found after they submitted their application that project wasn't eligible because they were not serving a low to moderate income area. They have to be over 51%. They were short of that. They would have made it if we could qualify them under low to moderate clientele, because they were well over the 51% for that, but HUD doesn't allow that. So we weren't able to fund them. And did you have anything to add about that?
Yeah, thanks, Janice. The Clear Creek Bowman Parks and Rec project seemed pretty straightforward for us because it's not a tremendous amount of funding, and it would be a tremendously valuable improvement for yet another area of recreation in Carson City. The Rural Housing Authority project is a big project. It will have a tremendous amount of impact, and so based on the priorities, that made the most sense, and we wanted to try and fund as much as we could when we saw that. The Public Works Department street project, I think the concern with citizens over streets is, yes, there's a need to improve them, but citizens feel that the obligation falls on the city and not necessarily HUD grants to be able to shore up that possibility. We all want to see streets improved, I think, as the committee, so that's a challenging one. The Harvest Hub is starting up, and we really all of us liked the idea of the Harvest Hub and the project, and we would like to see it happen in Carson City. I think if when we looked at that and we talked about that, some seed money would be great. Again, just falling back on the priorities, we fell on trying to fund the first two. But funding the Harvest Hub fully, there was, in my opinion, a lot of rent in that, and that would be okay, but it would be probably more prudent to fund some seed startup money to get things rolling with them, and they're still formative, and there was some inconsistencies in their application, but they cleared those up for us at the review questions meeting, so that's kind of the summary. And we wanted the ambulance, that would have been great, but didn't, kind of fell through, so.
Okay, board members, comments? Go. Comments or questions? Go.
So are we going to have, so I have applicant questions, and so so no one from Ronwood is here?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'll have them come up.
That's all my questions.
Just wait a second. We'll have everybody come up. Let's see if there's any questions on the process here. Then we'll have the applicants come up if anybody wants to speak. So anybody else? Jim?
Well, if I may, I don't know if it's the applicant or to staff, but on the agenda item, page 10, 11, and 12, the Reach Up program began in 2007, and we funded it every year until 2011 for this. And so I didn't know, or maybe this is an applicant question, how did they have that program without the funding from 2011 to 2015?
After 2011, they were funded through CSSG.
Okay, a different funding source, okay. Thank you.
Got it? Okay. All right. Ready? We'll take testimony from any of the applicants want to come up. Anybody, whether you're on the right side of the list or the wrong side. Come on up if you want. Now's the time. Ron Wood. Come on.
Good morning. Really what I wanted to do, it's on page 6 of 17 of the packet, and I'm interested, it indicates that you served 299 youth, and the counseling sessions were 732. So does that mean on average it only takes 2.45 sessions to have a success? I'm looking for the success of the program, and I thought, wow, you're able to bring them in and meet the crises in 2 to 3 sessions?
Well, some people show up for intakes only, some people show up for 2 sessions and don't come back, and then some people come for 5 sessions, some people come for the whole 10 sessions. So if you look on, I believe it's the last page, you will see that 44 clients were referred out, 47 attended 2 or less appointments, and 34 attended 3 or more appointments. So out of the 732, that breaks down to, the 44 clients were referred out, so they only had the 1 session. After the intake, it was deemed that they were out of my scope of practice, so I set them up with somebody outside the agency, a therapist, and so they were only seen for that 1 session.
So only 34 clients? How many clients actually went through your counseling? Let me say it that way then.
So, some people rarely do clients attend 10 sessions. On average, clients attend about 5 sessions.
Okay. Thank you.
And just while we're on that last page, just a note.
Okay.
You have the percentage
Of
of
Caucasian?
the participants. Yeah.
200, it's supposed to be 77.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Okay. Any other questions?
And on
Go, Jim.
page 11 of 17, where you say the outputs on line item 1, the 700 reach-up counseling sessions for 50 minutes, the 700 youth counseling therapeutics support sessions, an hour and a half. When you add up, that's a lot of hours. And how many individuals are going through this?
On average, it's about 8. We like right now, we're in the process of getting another grief group going, and we're in the process of getting a self-harm group going. And so depending on clients' needs, we get different groups going, and sometimes it's 4 people. Like right now with the self-harm group, all we want is 4 people. We've got 3 people signed up for it. And so we get different groups going based on clients' needs. Right now I've got, in the last month, I've had 4 kids, 2 that lost their little brother, 1 that lost her dad, 1 that lost her cousin, and so we're going to get a art therapy grief group together for those kids. And so we're constantly getting these groups together for, based on the client's needs.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks. Anything you want to add? You don't have to.
Just, I feel this program's really beneficial. We have a lot of clients falling through the cracks that aren't insured, and so we're constantly getting referrals from the school. And to get into, the people who aren't insured need to go to Carson Counseling and Supportive Services. And like right now, I've got a little girl that needs help so bad, and the referral's over there, but she can't get in, and so like I'm kind of like the way station, and I'm seeing her just so she has that support until she gets over to the agency for her appointment. And that's one of those things I do. We need this place for people to be until they can get the services that they need. Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, any other applicants? Anybody want to weigh in? Huh? Food for thought? Anybody? Come on up. I think we got some questions for food for thought after we give it some thought.
I hope so. Marlene Maffei, Executive Director. Okay, let me have it.
Go.
Okay, on the question of the total number of people that are low and moderate income, how many are low to moderate income, and how many are Carson City residents? And your answer was, we conduct research to establish our food service locations in neighborhoods with a high population of children receiving free or reduced lunch during the regular school year. Consequently, we feel a high percentage of the recipients meet the demographic of a low to moderate income and are Carson City residents. So what that says to me is that's what you think. Is there a method for you to measure that so that you can actually know how many are low to moderate income? Because the complaint I've heard in the past is that anybody can go to the park and get a lunch. And it can be somebody that's low to moderate income, it could be somebody who's middle class, it could be somebody that's
And that is correct. So because we partner with the USDA for this program, that is one of the USDA guidelines, is that the meals are open to children ages 2 to 18, no questions asked. But we do have to be providing those meals in the low to moderate income areas. So they actually qualify our area for us. And, you know, we use some statistics from the schools, we do census reports, things like that. So our areas are what qualify us and give us that statistic. But there's nothing, I mean, somebody could come over that really doesn't have a need, and we have seen that in the past. Being out there every day, the children that are coming on a daily basis, the need is really, really there. It is a very rare occasion that someone shows up, and it will typically be because they're friends with a kid who does come, and they bring the friend, or somebody's coming to check it out. We have conversation with the parent about the program and its purpose, and we never see them again. You know, I think last year, twice of our 55 serving days, I had one family show up. It was a mom. She had 4 kids. We had the conversation. I never saw her again. And, you know, the other time it was a friend of somebody that does live in the neighborhood. So, I mean, no, we don't get paperwork from them. We don't ask for income statements and where they live. The USDA does not allow us to do that. It's more the gap is bridging. These kids rely on free lunch at school during the school year, and then come summertime, they typically would go without.
Thank you. And then on the project budget, there's a question that says, have you applied for or received any funds or in-kind contributions from Carson City? And your answer was none, but you actually received free use of the community center kitchen with an approximate value of $10,800 over the course of the year.
Right, and that was an amended.
That was amended in the committee?
That had come in and.
That was included in the packet as the supplemental information. So that, I think they may not have realized that that was in kind from Carson City on the application.
Okay, so that was handled at the committee level then, because it's not in our package.
Right, it's not in, it's in your packet. If you look before the priority needs table, it's the supplemental information, value of in-kind contributions from Carson City, and it describes this.
Right, that's where I picked up the number, the
Okay, but yeah, in the
$10,800.
packet, or in their application, that was not described in there.
Okay.
It probably should have been, but I'm thinking that they maybe didn't realize that that was considered an in-kind contribution.
And Chris, that would have or would not have made a difference in your recommendation?
Not at this level of funding with the priorities.
On page 4 of 14, paragraph 2, you serve 4,523 meals, and that's 82 children per day. Is that, what days do you serve this, Monday through Friday?
Correct. We serve Monday through Friday, starting the first day of the summer vacation through the last Friday of summer vacation.
Okay. But nothing through the school year, correct? Only through summer?
This funding is only for our summer program. Through the school year, we do the backpack program, and we have different funding for that.
On item number 3, it says, in addition, the project will provide summer employment to approximately 4 Carson City residents. So the grant is funding the salaries?
It helps pay for the salaries. We hire culinary students from the high school and give them a summer job, and they are in charge of, we do all of the menu planning and the shopping. They put the meals together. They do all of the cooking, all the preparation for it to go out the door.
Do you know how much you pay in salary versus how much you provide funding for meals?
Oh, gosh, it should be in the budget. Hang on.
It's on page 8 of 14.
We don't actually have the food expense in here on this budget. Oh, yes, we do, I'm sorry. So the difference in salary for the total for the operations is $19,500 in salary, $11,600 in food. This is just based off of last year's estimates, and then we don't really know yet what the reimbursement will be from the USDA. Salary is not something that we can slack on. I need to make sure that these people show up every day. You know, we supplement the rest of the program with volunteers. We need 3 to 5 people daily out there helping to serve the children and doing the activities with the kids, and all of that is done with volunteers. But as far as the salary goes for the kitchen employees, that also includes, you know, salary for my bookkeeper. There's a ton of paperwork required with this program on a daily basis. You know, it's for a driver. I have to have somebody 25 or older that's in the vehicle that takes the meals out every day, and they supervise everything. So it's just, I mean, we can't operate without employees.
All right. So my questions really go to another area. I noticed that you indicate in your, it says, we've been reasonably successful at financing this program exclusively through grant funds and food donations, and that you plan to continue this approach in 2016 and beyond. So my concern is that the program is expecting Carson City to continue to fund Food for Thought, and I want to say that, like all programs that we do, we expect the applicant to become more self-sufficient or obtain other sources. And so while it says that in the application, I don't want to lead you to believe that we're, as Carson City, going to continue to sustain the program, and encourage you to look for other fundraising activities. So I just wanted to point that out, that it looks to me like the expectation is you're not going to fundraise for this program because you're doing it for the backpack program. Is that what I'm reading here?
No, we're constantly looking for additional grant opportunities. Like we found a different grant this year that we applied for it works with summer food program. It will help, we do backpacks on the last day of the program. We give all the kids a backpack stuffed full of school supplies. So we applied for funding to cover that, and then doing the extracurricular activities that we do with the kids. And then we just came across another grant. So we've been looking for different little ones to try to start building that summer food program, you know, budget and having some funds in there for that. So it's not that we are 100% relying on the city grants. It's just we feel that we really fit the criteria for it and, you know, what we're offering to the community. But we are always looking for additional funding options or donors to help with this program.
I just wanted to let you know on the record that we tend not to like to fund programs for 10 years and 15 years, and so just as a note.
Any other questions? I don't see any. Thanks.
Thank you guys so much.
All right. Anybody else? Good morning.
Good morning, excuse me.
That's okay. Take your time.
Yes.
My name is Florence Phillips. I'm the founder and director of the ESL, that's English as a Second Language in-home program.
Good morning, Florence. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you.
Good to see you again.
I thank you for the additional increase.
Any questions of Florence? We have a couple questions up here. Supervisor Pankowski.
Good morning, Florence. On one question here, how will the funds be used for this project? It says approximately half of the total clients served by ESL in-home program are residents of Carson City. But 2 pages later, it says 100% are residents. So can you clarify?
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
The first one is question 6 on page 5 of 14.
Okay. Half of the programs, one-third of the salaries is in this budget, and we expect 100% of increased English skills from the current students that we have and those that we hope to put on this year.
So my question is, what is the number of clients that are Carson City residents? Because in one place it says 50% or half, and in another place it says 100%.
Well, right now we have 260 clients living in Carson City. And all of them, 100% of them, are increasing their English language skills.
So are you programming in Washoe County as well, or other counties?
Oh, yes, we're in
Okay.
5 counties,
Okay.
but
That
we're
explains it then.
talking right now about Carson City.
Okay.
That's what our grant is for, is just for Carson.
Okay, that was my only question.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Florence?
Just one.
Go, yep.
So Florence, the recommendation is for 11,174 versus the 30,000 that you asked for. Are you going to be able to provide the services with the 11,000?
Not completely.
So will you reduce the number, fewer books? How will you accommodate the program with less funding?
We will have to decrease the number of students from our waiting list that we have been hoping to start in the new program. We get calls every day, so that wait list keeps increasing. With more funding, we would be able to take care of the wait list that we right now have. And it's about 300 students on our wait list. I have some tutors already waiting, but I can't recruit more until I know that I have the funding for their books.
So you'll continue to work on the 260 that are currently in the program, expanding their service, but you won't add additional clients until you raise more money?
Until I raise more money, correct. I need to tell you that we just got some other students reporting in that they have passed their citizenship test, so that number is now up to 201 citizens in Carson City. And we have 51 attending our citizenship class, which is a 12-week class. Hopefully by the end of, let's see, we're in March, April. By June, we should have more citizens because they're really determined in becoming U.S. citizens. This is a wonderful thing. Another addition that I have since January is schools. I am being requested to find tutors to teach the parents of the school children, which is what we want to focus on now. The parents that we are teaching English to are now helping their children with homework and other school activities. And the teachers are really thrilled in the schools where we're in that their classes are running more smoothly with the parents helping at home. So I'm increasing, like Seeliger and Mark Twain have been contacting me to find tutors, and we don't get funds from the schools. So I need that additional money to start teaching these parents that drop off their children at school. So I'm hoping, that it could be increased.
Okay. I don't see any more questions up here. Thank you, Florence.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Any questions of any of the applicants? We want Nevada Rural Housing. Anybody here on that? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, I'm Eddie Holt, Director of Real Estate, and this is Don Boble, our Senior Project Manager.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My question is, this is in 2 phases, your project. So can you walk us through how the phases are going to work? I just want to make sure that you can actually use the funding this year and it isn't going to get rolled over to next year.
The phases are worked concurrently. The tax credit is going to close around March 31st. We'll start building probably about April 15th. We're permit ready. The building construction will start, and then the footprint of the building will put foundations for both the 39 unit and the facility itself and the on-the-job training, which this particular funding is for, the foundation, everything we've built. We had to put it in 2 phases because of the way the tax credit works, and the syndicator who funds the whole other part of the project had to see it as 2nd phase, because if we didn't get these funds, we had to find alternative funds for it. Might have to build it later. So we had to put it as 2 phases. That's why it's legally done that way. But now that the funding does come, we can build them concurrently. So just called phases, but they can be built at the same time. So, and the estimated construction would be done approximately February 28th of 2017.
Any other questions? It's a good project.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Good morning.
Morning. Tom Howell, representing Clear Creek Bowman. Our request is pretty much straightforward. It's simply an ADA improvement for the Centennial Park Archery Range. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Tom? Jim?
I'm just, I believe it'd be Parks and Recs. We're making improvements at Ross Gold Park and the rifle range using funding mechanisms without the grants. I'm just wondering why we needed grant money for this improvement, or why you came to us for this improvement through the grant system, and we didn't need it to do Ross Gold Park or the rifle range.
In this particular situation, community development block grants don't require any kind of a match, and that this is a very nice fit for community development. This project fits very well because of the ADA accessibilities. And it's a small project. We just don't have any money for this small of a project, to be honest. We really don't. All the other projects that we've been working with have required us to be able to leverage some money. So that was the reason. It just fit nicely into this pot of money.
Any other questions of Tom or Vern? I don't see any. Thanks. Good morning. Okay. All right. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in? Make an argument for changing anything? Not changing? All right. Board, are we ready then? All right. We'll bring it back here to the board and make the hard decision. But before we do that, Chris, please tell your committee, and I know you got committee members here, want to thank. These are difficult decisions that you have to make, and it's not lost on any of us up here that they are difficult decisions because there's a lot of need. But I think on behalf of all of us, we want to thank you folks for doing the first cut for us, making the vetting analysis. Very good. Okay, pass that on, please, if you could.
I sure will. Thank you.
All right. All right, board, we want to try a motion first? Go.
Want a motion?
Yeah, motion's in order. Go. So we go.
Okay. I make a motion, I move to approve the Community Development Block Grant funding for fiscal 16-17 as recommended by the Application Review Group and subject to approval of the FY 16-17 budget, and to open a 30-day public comment period from March the 3rd to April 1st, 2016 for review of the Carson City Draft CDBG 2016-17 Annual Action Plan to implement the Department of Housing and Urban Development CDBG program of, right now, $900,568. That's the new amount, right?
No, it is $368,516 at the very bottom.
Oh, sorry, 368,516. That's the revised amount that we got.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion?
Yes.
Discussion's in order.
I just wanted to say thank you to the committee as well. I know how many times you meet, the number of hours that you put into this, and you do an enormous amount of work so that we don't have to. Because otherwise, we would spend the 20 hours that you guys spent on this here in the meeting. And so I haven't heard anything today that makes me want to change anything that you guys have done. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Supervisor Bonkowski.
Any other comments on the discussion side of things? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 4 in favor, 1 abstention. I got it this time. How about, I'm getting better. I know it took me a couple years to get that, but I got it. I'm getting there. All right. Thanks to everybody. I know it's a big, there are a lot of needs out there, but thank you to everyone, okay? Thank you. Let's take a recess for 5 minutes, and we're a little bit ahead, not much. We'll be in recess, and we'll get started here again in 5-10 minutes, okay? Board of Supervisors meeting back to order. We'll now pick up on item 10. This is for information only, presentation discussion on a status of the Water Resource Recovery Facility Phase 1A project. Who's going to do it? David, Mr. Bruchetta, go.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, board members. For the record, David Bruchetta. So what this is this is going to be about a 40,000-foot view of the upgrades that we're going to be doing to the wastewater treatment plant, and it's kind of setting the stage for 2 contracts that'll be following after that. This update is the what we call the Phase 1. So here's a high-level picture of the treatment plant. And I'm going to start at the beginning of the process and kind of just walk through each of them if you have specific questions. I wasn't planning to get into details with equipment or anything like that, but if you want more information, just ask. So Darren just pointed out, one of the things that we want to emphasize, and it's changed, is the new name, the top of this, you know, the sewer plant, many other names I've heard, I won't repeat, but the new name for this is really called the Water Resource Recovery Facility. And the reason is because part of these new processes that we're putting in are helping clean up the water even more. And we're removing some of the nutrients out of it, and that was working closely with the NDEP and some future regulations that are coming along. So we're starting that process. So this is the Water Resource Recovery Facility. Starting at Headworks, which is the very beginning of the process, we did minor work to the headwork side of things. The very first thing when the sewage comes in, we have what's called a bar screen, and we have to put a new one in. Our existing one's just failing. It takes out the big stuff that gets into the sewer, and this headworks will be part of the next phase that comes up. But because we phased our rates in, we couldn't do everything at once. So right now we're just doing some minor modifications, but that's going to include some controls, some electrical, and this new bar screen that we're putting in. The next has to do with the pump station modifications. So after the treatment goes through the primary process, then we have to pump it into the secondary system. And this is an existing building at the facility that we're doing significant modifications to the pumping, the structure itself, some electrical and controls to help us get it to the new system, which you're going to see coming up here. This is the heart of the system. This is the main area, and this is going to be a very large concrete structure put up there. It's the called bioreactors, and down toward the bottom of your screen there's a little circle. That's going to be actually another clarifier. It's another settling tank that we're putting in. This is the heart of the system. It removes the pollution out of the wastewater, and there's where we're going to spend a significant amount of time. The next is what we call RAS-WAS, but it just deals with the solid side of things and where we put the solids and how we direct it. New pumps, new equipment, new controls, updated electrical will be associated with these modifications in an existing building. The next has to do with what we call number 3 water, and that's just drinking water that has an air gap in it that we use for our processes at the treatment plant. And there's going to be some modifications to the existing controls put into that facility or into that building and to the pumps themselves so that we can help control the water within the plant much more efficiently. There's some modifications. We recently did an upgrade to the chlorine building, the chlorine holding tank, and what we want to do is we want to be able to get that to these new bioreactors, the new secondary system. So there's some slight modifications to help us get it to the new system. Down here is what's called a DAF, or dissolved air flotation modifications. When we deal with the solid side of things, we have to thicken things up before it goes into our digesters and breaks down. So we're doing some modification to existing equipment. We're upgrading that existing equipment. This is, again, here's a significant chunk of work here, which are called the digester modifications. So we currently have 3 digesters, and that's where all the solids go and basically break down. They do produce a significant amount of methane gas. And so the existing system, the existing mixing system, is very outdated, and the heating system to help control this is very outdated. So we're putting in new systems, new controls, and a new mix system. And so a significant amount of work is going into our digesters. The electrical upgrades to power all this, we're working with NV Energy. They're bringing in a new electrical service for us to be able to power all this new equipment. In the center of the stage, in the center, you see a block. There's going to be a building there. That building is going to be the power supply to the main new heart of the system, the bioreactors. And then you see 2 blocks, one on the upper side and lower side. Those are going to be new generators. And we're changing the philosophy in how we're dealing with emergency standby situations. You remember about 2 years ago, we had a critical failure at the plant, and we had to put raw sewage out into our holding basin. Not a preferred situation, but with this new upgrade, our idea is during an emergency situation, we can still treat the sewage and pump it off-site into off-site storage. So it's a much cleaner, more updated, and this is working with NDEP to make sure that we don't put the raw sewage back on site. There's going to be some civil site improvements, a couple different areas shown here. On the very bottom, on the front off of 5th Street, there'll be some improvements. The whole entrance is going to be changed. The gate's going to be brought out. There'll be landscaping associated with the whole front and side of the treatment plant. In the upper left-hand corner, there is a big flood wall that was put in a couple years ago, and that flood wall is going to actually continue. There's a road that enters into the treatment plant. That's a emergency access road. We're going to close that off to improve our flood stability and build the wall straight across. And then we're going to put the new emergency road over by the solar panels in the upper right-hand corner. There's going to be a new emergency access road. So we work closely with the fire department on that to make sure that they had access or other people had access to the treatment plant. Now, with this upgrade, we recognize that there's a lot of things that we need to do with the treatment plant, but we couldn't afford it all. So what we listed, what we call bid alternatives. And what these are is if we can get this project completed, then we would spend any available contingency money fixing these next components. They have to be fixed. We need to fix them. But setting the project, we had to set higher priorities. So the first bid alternative is the screw pumps, and these are just at the headworks itself, is to lift the water and run it through the process. And we opened that whole process up, and it's just dilapidated, could fail at any time, but there's higher priority needs. The next has to do with the bid alternate number 2 is a primary rehab. That just means those big holding tanks, the clarifiers there, we need to rehabilitate them. The weirs, the infrastructure, the solids collection system, all that, we take the existing structure that's in there and we put in new equipment and bring that up to speed to where it should be working properly.
David, do you have the estimates for each one of these bid alternates available?
I do. I don't have that with me. When we get up and talk to KG, I don't know if they have those numbers. All bid alternates were just under $2 million together. Bid alternate number 3 has to do with some of the stuff that's going to be going out of service as part of this project, and so we want to take those existing structures and make them more useful. So we're going to use them as an upgraded equalization tank, combine these 2 areas that are currently outlined in there so that we have good control of where the treatment plant can go and it gives us stability. The next bid alternative is number 4, which is a secondary rehabilitation. Again, we have different types of settling tanks. This treats a different part of the process. And again, we need to rehabilitate the internal structures associated with that. Bid alternate number 5 is emergency storage. That's where we had to put the overflow from the sewage. And what we need to get in there is we need to line it. So we do want to keep that as an emergency to an emergency. It's always the backup plan, but what we need to do is we need to line it so that it protects the groundwater. And then the last bid alternate is it's an off-site lift station. It's up in the collection system to help bring the sewage to the treatment plant, and it's upgrading some of the controls, the radio and controls in the system, and that'll be the bid alternate number 6.
That's a good question. So if you don't have, let's say we have 1.5 million or whatever in contingency, you'll do as many of these alternates as you can. Does the rest of them become then Phase B?
The rest of them would be, we put into our capital improvement plan, and we can support through some of the system reinvestment funding. So they're projects that we had listed. It's just to get this project, the heart of the project done, we just didn't have enough money to do it.
Out of the 6 that you listed, David, do you have a priority of which is the number 1 you want?
Out of the 6 we listed, we do have some priorities, but, what we're seeing is changes. I mean, I would have told you that there are higher priority needs, and then just here 2 weeks ago, we had to pull the covers off of our, screws, and we found out one of the screws wasn't working right, and it's just dilapidated and falling apart. So I could give you a priority now, but in a year and a half from now, when we have a better handle on this project and what money's available, we may have to even repair some of this stuff in the interim to get it through to see where that money's available. So I can give you a priority now, but I think it would probably change by the time this project's done.
And just going back a little bit, when you mentioned that you're going to do some landscaping in front, what is the cost of that?
Total cost of the landscaping was just under $500,000 for the total cost of the landscaping itself.
And is that a higher priority than the things you just listed here? These 6 things? How much could that $500,000 do out of these high priorities?
Well, I mean, that's a good question, and we've asked that question ourselves. But, it's been my understanding, Darren, and correct me if I'm wrong, we want to include that in the project. That was listed to us as a high priority to get this done, to complete the landscaping.
It's a very good discussion point. What it comes down to is we have to follow the same guidelines with our projects as we do make private developers. And when you're putting in a facility, especially some sort of, that's not exactly pleasing to the eye, you gotta screen it. And so we're just following those same standards that are applied to any normal Joe Blow business owner that would come in and want to build something like this. But it's worth the discussion.
I think it is worth the discussion, because if you have this high priority, and I understand the idea behind the landscaping. If I lived in that area and I drove by every day, I understand that totally. But the landscaping is secondary to the smell or the aroma. So the smell and the aroma, will that go away with the improvements we're making now?
Go away, no, not going to completely go away. Improve, yes. Odor was listed as one of the priorities. We take away some of this equipment. It's going to definitely improve. The next phase, the phase B, when we deal with our headworks, that's going to be the next big chunk that makes it improve. So each one of these is incremental. I mean, if odor was listed as the #1 top priority, we wouldn't be rehabbing an existing facility. We'd rebuild a new facility, but that's cost prohibitive. So it'll go down, but not completely go away.
I think $500,000 on landscaping with the need and the necessity is what we're looking at as a high priority. I think that's not only a discussion, I think it's a very hard decision as well, as most are. Did we look at just putting up fencing rather than landscaping? Is that cheaper, where you had a wood fence, something visually, not a wrought iron fence, but?
There is a fence that matches the whole, it's a split rail fence. It's going to go around the whole facility. And I agree with you. I mean, absolutely. We can take some elements out of that to put it back into some of these bid alternates to get some, higher priority projects completed. Absolutely.
Essentially, even with all the improvements you're making now, we're not going to be at the stage where it's going to be recyclable sewage back into the whole system, right? I mean, we are millions and light years away, or how far are we away from getting to that plateau?
Well, we reuse the water. I mean, when we started our whole reuse program back in the 80s, I mean, we were way ahead of everyone else. Some of the nutrient removal that we're putting into the cleaning up of this process will help clean that water up to address some of the regulations that are coming. We didn't completely fund it. I mean, we did do some nutrient removal to do it right, which will be the next phase. Is going to cost a lot more money to get rid of this, but once the regulations come. Out of the drought forum, there was a lot of discussion about, using reclaimed water as what they call indirect potable recharge, and there's lots of firms working on that, but there's definitely a cost associated with that. And so that will come probably in the next 5 years and further develop.
Out of the 6 that you mentioned as a second priority, I guess I could say, there's an ongoing repair out there all the time, essentially. So at what point would the funding have to stop? I mean, when are we going to be at a plateau where we're now capable of maintaining what we have without reinvesting year after year, millions and millions of dollars. So when does that end?
Well, to be honest, I don't know if it ever ends. What we presented to the board back in 2013 is we presented a 25-year plan. And what we did is we broke it into 3 phases. This first phase is the immediate needs to be able to ensure that what we put out as a byproduct meets health and safety standards, meets what the NDEP requirements are. That's phase 1A and 1-2. The next phase that comes along, and that phase 1A and 1-2 is what the rates were set on. The next component to come is going to be the regulatory environment. We foresee in the future years, regulatory, the requirements are going to change. And we see that as the next phase, and so there'll be expenditures to meet those regulatory requirements. And then the last component is going to be growth. Eventually, you know, our plant is not designed for complete build out, but as growth happens, we have a good buffer right now, but eventually growth will happen and we will have to expand the plant, and that would be considered phase 3.
And do you know what that growth would, how much that is that you would have to expand the facility? Do you have that number? Do we have any idea of when you need to expand? Because we got a lot of projects coming forward for growth. So do we have that number?
We do have some numbers. Again, that was presented back in 2013. Instead of just shooting a number off my hip, I'd have to go back and look at that exact number. You know, it was in the hundreds of millions. I mean, it's very expensive to look at the whole thing. But what I can say is growth is happening, but right now, you know, we're addressing the major immediate needs of the facility. Growth is going to come in the future years when we expand out. One of the things we are putting together in the next couple of years are these master plans that will help share that information. We're looking at a collections master plan, a reuse master plan, and a treatment master plan. And then those 3 elements put together will help predict and estimate where we're going in the future.
David, maybe a better way to ask Jim's question is, how many residential units could hook up to the current system before we would be required to expand the plant?
Right now, I don't have a number for you for that. We have to actually do that as part of a study. We've done some just preliminary looking at that. One of the things we're faced with is when we do some of those projections is looking at the consumption, the usage, gallons per day per capita. And with the new construction comes a lot different usage based on not so much the historic usage. So when someone rehabilitates a new property or someone builds a new property, that goes down. And so we need to fine tune that number to be able to put in those projections. So at this point, I mean, I don't have that number. I know that'll be addressed in the future, but that's years into the future.
Right, but the current capacity of the plant is around 8 million gallons a day?
So our current permitted capacity of the plant is 6.9 million gallons today, million gallons a day, and we're currently dealing with an inflow of about 4.2. You know, that's one of the positive things over the last 15 years. You know, we had much higher flows at the wastewater treatment plant. And they used to be around 5.5 million gallons a day. Through various reasons, they've fallen now. Looks like they've kind of stabilized in the low 4 to 4.2 million gallons per day. And with growth, those will slightly start to go up, and eventually they'll trend out into the future.
And so we have in the 25-year plan, there's 2 additional phases. And we budgeted, if I remember right, about 25 million for those improvements in the plan. I think the total plan was 54 million.
No, looking out the 25-year plan was over $100 million.
Okay. So are we, before we go to the phase 2, which would be for future regulatory changes, are we going to make sure that we've completed all of the necessary improvements to the plant in its current condition? What I'm trying to get at is, you have these 6 bid alternates. I'm sure that there's other things that are going to come up that are going to need to be done. So at what point do we prioritize getting the plant in its current state in top working order before we tackle future regulations?
I know you're looking for like a date. Again, what we're doing right now is working on things that put us in, serious concerns with NDEP violations of a permit. The majority of the treatment facility was built in the 60s and 70s, and the entire plant's not being rebuilt. I mean, that whole rebuild of the entire plant was much more than what our rates support. So what we wanted to do was to do a 5-year phase into the rates, and part of the rates covered this immediate needs to bond for this, the immediate needs. Part of this funding's coming from system reinvestment funding, which was a big increase in that rate. And the system reinvestment funding is to just reestablish some of these pumps, motors, equipments that's starting to fail that we didn't deal with. You'll see we still have a very extensive capital improvement plan, somewhere in the neighborhood, $30 million over 5 years. I mean, it's still very significant. And we expect that to be supported through these rate increases, which is the system reinvestment funding. So this is the main emergency needs. As the rates come in and are fully implemented, the system reinvestment funding will help us with some of the repair and rehabilitation of the other existing equipment.
So part of the system reinvestment that's in the plan was also to create maintenance reserves, maintenance and replacement reserves. So how are we doing on that? We're now 2.5 years into the 5 years. Is that correct? So how are we doing? Are we on target? Are we below? I mean, walk us through that.
You're stealing the thunder from the Utility Oversight Committee in March. We're on target for that. I mean, our goal is to meet the financial objectives 1 year after full implementation of rate increases. We would like to see each of these elements increase year by year. In some cases, we've had some equipment failure that we had to use from system reinvestment funding, so some of the numbers have changed from last year, but we are definitely on track for meeting the financial objectives. On the sewer side, our rate projections look very strong. Our revenues come in compared to what the model said, are very close. It's a much different situation in water. We'll talk about that another time. But on the sewer side, they're matching. So we are on target for hitting the meeting the financial reserves in fiscal year 18-19, which is 1 year after the full implementation of the rates.
And then my last question is, each year when we have our rate increase for this 5-year plan, we see a reduction of flows, either because of conservation or because of the rate increase itself. So are you still comfortable? We had this conversation before we approved the rate increases that we were accounting for those reductions. Are we meeting those targets, or are they exceeding what we expected? And so every time we see a reduction of flows, we see a reduction of revenue. So how are we doing on that?
Well, the good news out of that is when we redid our rate structure, one of the things that we built into there was rate stability. So on the residential side, what we did is we went to a flat rate. And by going to a flat rate, we ensure that we create some rate stability so that flat rate goes up every year. It's not water dependent. On the commercial side, it's too hard to put a flat rate on them, so that one is volume dependent. So we created rate stability through the new structure we have, and I think that's one of the reasons we're on target right now.
I just want to comment on that, Supervisor Bonkowski, is, and David alluded to it, but we're right on track, and just as in the direction we were for wastewater. Water is a different story, and we're not really prepared to talk about that today, but because the rates weren't based completely on that base charge, it's not tracking like we had predicted, specifically because of the drought. But that'll be another discussion, but I want to make sure nobody's misled today. We're talking about wastewater, not water.
I will just chime in. I know David likes to talk about cationic flocculant and all those sorts of things. You asked a question about number of units and capacity. One of the comments we had in reviewing the Lampa Ranch is that the capacity in the plant today can't be promised for 25 years. It's first come, first serve. I was just doing some calculations. The way that our permit's 6.8, the way NDEP looks at our permit is they say when you hit 85% of that capacity, you need to expand. So and also to prepare for that, we kind of want to be there at 80% to have that plan so that by the time you're there, you're ready. Looking at just the numbers roughly, there's about 4,000 equivalent residential units in capacity before we have to expand on that growth side. So that's at that 25-year plan. The growth, the third phase was further out. Obviously, that's a first come, first serve. You get somebody with 500,000 gallons a day taking up a chunk, that is offsetting that, if that helps.
That does help, and I would just add to that, that looking back at the number of units built in the past in Carson City, 500 in a year would be an exceptional amount. That would be like peak numbers. So that kind of gives you an idea. If we were in 2005 for the next 8 years, then we might start bumping up against that threshold, but we're nowhere close to that.
Correct.
Further questions of David on this? Anybody? Are you through?
Let me just go through the quick timeline here, and then I'll be done. So I started at this point because this was part of the presentation you'd already seen before, and since then, we've reached some major milestones as far as completing the project. So going forward, in November, we completed the design. That was a long process, but we're ready now. We've completed the design, and then we're here today to, the next two topics are going to be talking about moving forward with the construction phase, and that's with KG Walters Q&D proposed, and we have to do some special inspections associated with that. Then in the 2017-18 timeframe, we'll start talking about that Phase B planning, the next phase, which is the headwork side of things. And then eventually, that's planned has always been to, there'd be another bond issued for the completion of this Phase 1, and that'll happen in 2018. And then this Phase 1A target completion date will put us out into 2018.
So the second bond issuance is dependent upon the rate revenue at that time and the scope of work that remains. We have to balance those, right? Because we may not be able to cover the entire scope of work if the rate revenue doesn't justify the debt service on the bond.
That's correct. But again, projections are looking very close to what we had anticipated in the initial model when we set it up. So we didn't put all this into one phase because we did the 5-year rate phase in, and so we didn't have the revenue to support bringing this bond forward. We combined the first two bonds into this project, and that's why we still have another phase out there. The other option was to wait until the rates had worked. We had more revenue coming in than bond for the third, but we're just having too much equipment failure, so that's why we pushed that forward to get it done.
Can I clarify? Just so that the public and maybe even just myself, the rates that were established, you anticipate that we're hitting the mark, and that will cover through Phase 1B. And then future phases, you would have to see what rates did or collections did to determine. So you believe the current rate structure will cover through 1B?
Yes, the current rate structure, which includes the bonding side and the system reinvestment side, yes.
And just to stay on the same topic, it's going to cover, the rate increases will cover all the way up to 2018, which covers the $30 million, correct? The rate increases?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, so then if we have 100 million, basically, more in improvements, then we can anticipate the rates going up 3 or 4 more times to cover the new or the added areas that we have to. So in 2018, we'll be increasing the rates again, or at 2020?
No, so this again is just Phase 1A, and that's all we focused in on. The rates were designed to support Phase 1A. Phase B, or Phase 2 and Phase 3, we're just put in there saying that, here's where we look at where the future when we do approximate projections, but 25-year lookouts are best guesses.
So after 1B is completed, and you want to do any more work, the rates will go up again, correct? Basically.
Well, No, system reinvestment funding will still help replace some of the existing equipment, but outside of major catastrophic type failures, unexpected type things, it's going to cover the immediate needs, the repair of the immediate needs that we have, yes.
Okay, then those high priorities you listed in the beginning of the discussion, the rate increases will cover those?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Brochetta? Public want to weigh in? Anybody? I don't see any. Okay, is that it? Yep. All right, so next one, okay. So unless there's further questions, discussions, this is for information only. Let's take up the next item, see if we're going to fund this, okay? Ms. Tadman, go ahead.
Laura Tadman, Purchasing and Contracts.
It's okay. We're getting up here. Ask for a big break. Go.
Sorry. This is to approve contract 1314-132B, Water Resource Recovery Facility Phase 1A, CMAR Construction Services to KG Walters Construction and Q&D Construction, a joint venture, for a not-to-exceed amount of $29,991,581 to be funded from the Sewer Capital Construction Funds for fiscal year 15-16, 16-17, 17-18, and 18-19.
Okay. Do you want to just give a highlight of what this does? And then we already heard it, but just for the record.
So what I'd like to do is just bring up some of the CMAR team, have them sit up here if there's any specific questions you may have of them. But this is the next major milestone. So this is, just under a $30 million construction project to start to build this heart of the system, which is what I kind of described the main elements of that. There's a lot of electrical and a lot of detail within that, of course. But this is to help stabilize our system that we currently have. And if you have any specific questions between us and the team, I think we can answer them.
Anybody have any particular questions of the team? Jim, Supervisor Shirk, go.
A couple of quick questions. Can you tell us why this, for the general public, can you tell us why this did not go out to bid?
So the delivery method selected for this was the CMAR, or Construction Manager at Risk. We hired KG Walters Q&D through an RFP process to do what's called a CMAR pre-construction services. And the benefit of that is we join, the owner joins the designer and the constructor together to get you a very efficient and useful project. We found that to be very effective in this process. The next phase of this would be we have the option to do a bid, or we have the option to continue with the construction manager at risk process. We think it's in the best interest of the community to do the construction manager at risk process. It's a professional service, and according to NRS, you don't bid professional services.
Thank you. I did ask in change orders, how would they be put into play? And is there a dollar amount? In change orders, is there a percentage of the overall budget, or is there a no limit?
So with the change order process, we would handle it just like we do any other. We have a project manager that oversees this project that works for Carson City. And we work with our construction team. In the change order, we don't have a dollar limit on it. It's going to totally depend on what we dig up or what we find. And, the idea is that's why in the change order process, we have a contingency. At this treatment plant, we have a lot of unknowns. When we start digging into roads and the infrastructure, we won't know the health of some of them until we get into it. So that'll be determined as part of our normal process.
The principle of upgrades, as we've had this discussion before with city staff, any upgrades from this level to this level will come to the board for approval, or will those upgrades be made within staff, within your own department, if it's an upgrade?
Supervisor Shirk, I believe the recommendation we had is for any projects that are over $2 million, which of course this one was, that we would be providing a monthly update as to what we're doing and or change orders included with that. So this would fall in that category, so you would be briefed on that.
And any and all material or products is not being purchased by the city, but by the developer or contractor, correct? Where we're paying sales tax on it? We had that issue before as well.
Yes, for this project, all the material is provided by the contractor, and we're paying sales tax.
Thank you.
So I'd like to question the projects that are being done within this contract. So one Mr. Shirk brought up was the landscaping, and then the second, can you describe, I think you're going to build a new emergency road. Again, can we not use the existing road structure and not do the landscaping and meet the 6 bid alternatives? Would that not be more important, is to ensure the operation of the plant before we do aesthetic or changes that don't impact the plant itself? I'm just wondering on the priorities. I think ensuring that the plant is operational is the most important thing we can do. So I'd just like to understand why you selected these.
As far as the landscaping goes, I would agree to supporting it, but that's not the direction that we had as part of this process. I was under the understanding that the landscaping needed to be complete, and so that's why we had to do these bid alternates. So I would completely support eliminating or reducing that element of it and then putting that back into the construction project, absolutely. As far as the emergency access road, that is always an option, but there are some flood issues associated with it. Right now, that's our weakest point during a flood. So we identified that this is a critical structure. If a flood happened, and in the 100-year flood event, it would overflow where it's currently the weakest point, and that has the potential to shut down the whole treatment plant. So that actually is a high priority to get that wall back up and then put in the emergency access road. But the landscaping I would support. If the direction is don't do the landscaping, put it back into the plant, we would definitely work through that.
Let me add to that, David, if you might, because I think I need to respectfully push back a little bit on the notion that perhaps the landscaping is this frivolous addition. We can look at the total amount. We have development standards. There's quite a bit of blight in town. I field 1 to 2 complaints where I'll drive out to a property owner or a business owner who wants to complain about the development standards and the landscaping that he or she is required to put in on that property. Don't think for one moment that they won't use this to throw right back at us and go, well, you exempted yourself. The other thing is, even as you look at things like odor, one of the more important things to keep property values up in that area and to keep the ability of people who do want to sell homes and buy homes to make that process work more efficiently, having a landscaped water resource recovery facility goes a long way to that. It is not a frivolous, now we could look at the amounts, but I really, I have to knock down the notion that perhaps this is a frivolous use of money. This is not. These are development standards, and we hold commercial property owners to those same standards. They will definitely use this against us to push back on why they need to do it.
But I don't think it necessarily has to be in Phase 1A. So I'm not suggesting that landscaping isn't going to be completed. It's when we do it. And are the 6 bid alternates more important for the functionality of the plant, timing-wise, versus doing the landscaping now? That's really what I'm questioning, is when we do it and what our priorities are. And so it's more in what order should we accomplish this. And when you do landscaping, if something fails, do we have to take the landscaping out to fix something? So is it better to put the landscaping later in the phasing of the project?
I think we can work with the contractor, but in terms of when the landscaping gets built, that could be towards the end, and we'll have a feel for where we are with that contingency and where money needs to be spent. So those decisions could be made, as we get into the project.
So you're saying in this contract, we could give you the authority to eliminate, reduce, or change the landscaping component to hit some of the 6 bid alternates instead? I don't think we need that direction today to alter the, we have a contingency amount there to fund those, hopefully fund those additives.
And we'll know, once we get into the project a year, we'll have a really good idea of what contingency is remaining, and those decisions could be made in terms of, do we fix this, or do we put some landscaping here? I'm not sure that we need to.
You could do a change order to take the landscaping out?
Sure.
Then?
Sure.
I think hopefully that's what you're hearing, that we're saying here, that the 6 bid alternatives certainly look more important timing-wise, not getting done, but you see what we're saying here? So that would require a change order then, because the contract would say it had to be done. So you would come back with a change order and take it out and put it in, and it doesn't cost us any money to do a change order, removing something and doing one of the bid alternates, just swapping that money.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I interject a little bit. A lot of the equipment is very long lead. And so you can't just say, okay, at the end of the job, we're going to go purchase some screw pumps, because that'll take a year, maybe 6 months to 12 months to get the equipment. So I think that discussion needs to happen probably at least sooner than later, and perhaps be made halfway through the project in order to get it complete within the time frame that have planned for the project. And the landscape, just to correct a little bit, it's closer to $300,000 what that item is. Okay. Yeah. So I don't want you to be misled. It was 5, but it's closer to 3, but it's real money. I mean, the screw pumps, perhaps, I mean, we could purchase that with that amount. I mean, it's kind of a big deal. We've worked on those screw pumps already. We've replaced all the lower bearings throughout the last year. They're in really rough shape. You know, if those fail, you're in a lot of trouble. That might be, if I were making a decision, my first priority would be to fix those pumps, because you cannot have that fail. And we just recently did that emergency repair project for Tumwharf in the city of Reno, and they had a catastrophic failure at their headworks, and it cost them about $10 million to make the repairs in an emergency situation. So that's the flip side. If you don't make those proper decisions at the proper time, it could really hurt. So, and what you guys are dealing with, very symptomatic of everywhere we work. I mean, you guys are up against it. Everywhere we work, everybody's up against it, because they did not fund when they should have, right? I mean, you guys are having to deal with it now, but you have to fund this stuff, but nobody wants to do it because you don't see it. It's not a park. It's not, but this is real stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and this is our world. It's kind of the dark side of the world that nobody likes to see. I invited the city council for the city of Reno to come visit that headworks facility, and after that visit, they immediately doubled their funding from $7 million to $14 million per year because of that one 5-minute visit. They had seen enough. So same idea, built in the 60s. All our infrastructure is the same age, really, throughout the country. And so that's why so many communities are up against it, such as what you are. So if you have any more questions, I'd be happy to chime in. You've probably heard enough. But anyway, it might give you a little insight as, you know, where things are.
Along those lines, in terms of decision-making, and as you're going through this process, you don't have to come back to the board if there is some sort of significant expense that needs to be made and an improvement that needs to be made so that you can get this done without it costing a lot more in the long run.
Right. I might just add to that, one of our goals, and we're putting together a partnering workshop for next week, is we're going to try to salvage the contingency so you guys can purchase those items needed. And we're also looking to do continued value engineering. We see a lot of savings still to be realized in the design that we can, you know, utilize. So we're looking for buy-in from our partners at the city, our partners with the engineering firm, and we're going to go down that road next week when we have that meeting to see if we can get you the money to do what you got to do. So I think it's a potential.
Jim.
Just to elaborate a little bit more, I'm sorry, but if we start this project and then you see something that needs improvement that costs $3 million, you come back to the board or you just do it?
We would come back to the board if something costs $3 million, absolutely.
Okay, so what the dollar amount do you come back to the board then?
Well, we have a contingency here. It's $1.4 million. So if
anything over that?
Correct.
Or once you reach that plateau, you got to come back?
We have to come back, absolutely.
Okay. And if the landscape is in the contract, how do you take it out of the contract if we say, if we agree to the contract?
You do a deductive change order.
So you'd have to come back to the board for, but how do we rely on you to come back with that if we approve the contract? Why would we approve the contract assuming that you're going to come back to us with removing the landscaping to do upgrades?
Well, I don't think I'm hearing today that you want the landscape completely removed from the project. I think what I was hearing is that if we can afford it and also do those 6 items that we want to do, then we would do it, and that's the direction I'm taking, and we can do that. We will come back to you if we reach a point where we're not going to get those things done. Do you in fact want to remove the landscaping? We would have to come back with that.
Okay, so just to review, the 6 items that David mentioned earlier, that is not part of the contract, correct?
It's correct.
Okay. Landscape is part of the contract, correct?
Correct.
But if we want to remove the contract, or landscape from the contract, you'll come back to us, or we got to come back to you? Who does what?
If you want to remove the landscaping from the contract today, you can tell us to process a change order to remove the landscape, and we can do that today.
We can also just give you direction that we want the 6 bid alternates completed prior to funding the landscaping by the end of the project.
You could do that.
Okay, but those 6 items cost $2 million, is what roughly, correct?
Do you have an update, a little closer amount on that?
Which part, Dave?
The 6 bid alternates. I want to say they were right around 1.8 million is my best recollection of that.
Yeah, and again, I would have to, my perspective, I kind of have a priority list in my own mind, what I would do, what I'd see critical. And so regarding landscape, I think you could just do a change within the contract to reallocate the funding. I don't know, just add to that contingency. You could just throw it on top of that contingency. We were fighting to preserve a bigger contingency along the way because of this issue, right? The unknowns, the unforeseens. And I think we did a pretty good job at it. But yeah, more is better because there is a lot of stuff out there that needs a lot of love. Yeah.
So bear with me. So the 6 items are, that Dave mentioned, is how much dollar-wise?
It's just under 2 million.
Under 2 million.
Yeah, I don't have that number in front of me, so we'd have to just say approximately.
Okay, but to include those 6 at 2 million, where does that funding come from?
Well, those are items that are on our capital improvement plan. Those are 6 items. We have 36 items on our capital improvement plan. Those are 6 of the 36, okay? So these are things that are directly related with the work that we're doing that we need to fix. But we have 30 more of those that we need to fix. So we also have system reinvestment funds that are coming in as part of the rates to go in and fix things that need to be fixed. So we have that side of money too, that we can use to make these fixes potentially. So we don't, that's what I'm saying is right here, right now, today, I can't make that decision that the priorities are changing all the time and we have to fix, just like the chlorine building. We wanted to do that as part of this project, but it blew up before we could get to it. Not really blew up, but we had to fix it immediately. So we pulled it out of the project and we did a contract to fix it. So that's what I'm referring to is this is fluid. We're making these decisions as we go along. So the funding for those remaining 6 items, we might be able to pull some funding from system reinvestment to build 1 or 2 or 3 of them.
What does the Utility Oversight Committee say about this?
We gave them this presentation just last week, and we're going to be presenting our budgets to them on the 15th. We do contracts like this are included in the budget.
But what do they say about landscaping issue?
It was not discussed with them.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just one more. This is not an all or none decision on the 6 items. This is a menu of need, right? So prioritize the needs. You might be able to get 3 out of the 6, 4 out of 6, depending on how we do on salvaging the funds. So, this is not an all or none decision, but again, there's really some high priority items on that list of 6, and some of which you could probably let them slip. So, I mean, that decision needs to be made by Dave and his staff, but it's not an all or none decision here.
I just want to add one thing, just to try and sum this up as best as I get, we're looking at these 6 bid alternates and how we're going to fund them, but the reason we list them as bid alternates is because we have a core project that we need to get complete. And so that's why we wanted to bring the core project. And a lot of the discussions we're having, I get, are related to contingency or system reinvestment funding, but they're things that are still very important to the treatment plant, but they're not part of the core project, and that's why we did this. We did this saying that if we could get all this done in the project itself, that would be great, and that was what we preferred. But in reality, we can't. So until we know how much contingency is going to be used, it's too hard to make decisions on those other items. And so this contract today is for the core projects. Those 6 bid alternates will be if there's excess money to complete those. Does that clarify it any further?
Go.
So, sorry, it was late last night. I did get your late material, but then I sent a follow-up question. So when I looked at our funding that was available earlier on the agenda, we have about $7 million in the sewer operation account right now. When I look at the document done in late material, the $7 million will be utilized, $3 million in 17 and $4 million approximate, and I understand their approximations. So what I'm looking for when we do these major projects and multiple contracts for a project, because this isn't the only contract, it would be helpful if you would bring it back together as a total package for us so we can track what we're spending and where we're going. So if I'm correct, we have about 35 million, 35.7 on all of 1A. Is that about right? And hopefully, I tried to look all the way back from December of 2013, tracking everything on the project. And do we have bond money of about 40 million for this project? And then you're telling me on this that we have system reinvestment of another 7. So do we have, I'm trying to track with you why you think you don't have enough money to get all the bid alternates versus the project that I'm looking at. So I would just like the information so that we're making an informed decision.
I understand what you're asking. I saw the email this morning. We'll put something together. One of the challenges that we do have with this project, again, this was a 2-year design, and some of these projects had to be pulled out and completed prior. So that's why you're seeing one element of this, but some of these projects are being pulled forward that have already been completed. March 17th, we're going to be talking about centrifuge repairs that are not part of this project. That's, another $175,000. The plant's falling apart. And that's no surprise. So it's hard sometimes to give a complete picture. We know that we have this money coming in to do these major projects, and then an equipment fails, and we fund it with system reinvestment funding. We fund it with the source that we have. But we'll put something together.
And then if you'd put that out as a public document, just so that, again, I think it's important that the public understands that the plant is aging and what's being spent. And it's a whole picture for them, because I had many people thought we were getting a new plant. And I'm like, we're not getting a new plant. So I just think it's important that we're all on the same page and we all understand what the rates did cover, what they don't cover, and where we're going.
Dave, I think that if we could build a spreadsheet, for a project spreadsheet, for something like this, once the spreadsheet's built, then it's just a matter of debits and credits. If we have to pull something out of the project, they just debit it, you add it back over here. But it gives us a better idea of the overall project, because it gets really difficult. I mean, you're telling me it's difficult, and you're the one putting all this together. You can imagine it's difficult for us, too, to try to keep track of all of it and what we've approved and what funding we approved for it. So we're just trying to get a clear picture of the overall project and the debits and credits that are going on, so that, because we get asked questions, and it'd be nice if we could actually answer those questions, not sound like we're
We can definitely put that together. And one of the things that we did do to help clarify that, and if you go back and look at the capital improvement plan, we changed how we look at capital improvement planning. And last year that we brought forth the Utility Oversight Committee is we broke our capital plan out not just by projects that are needed. Our capital improvement plan is broken out by funding source. So we went the extra step to help clarify some of that information. So we already have a start on something like that, and maybe just going through it and walking through that process and having an understanding.
That would be great. And then I just want to make another comment here that going back to what Nick said, we have development standards and we need to abide by those development standards. So I don't see how we pull landscaping out of the contract. We just need to figure out when we build it. But my point is that this is painful. The landscaping is painful for us because it takes away from other things that we could make improvements on. And I just want to say that is what commercial property owners are dealing with every day. So when we are looking at these commercial projects that come forward and we have people that testify in front of us and say, this is really difficult because your development standards make it so I can't improve my building or make it functionally obsolete because it'll never be worth what you're going to make me spend to improve on it. That's where this is coming from. Now we have a firsthand example that we have to pay for.
I think you got the idea. It's when. Because I think, at least from my perspective, I think that it's important to comply with the development standards, and it's also important that we're not, if we're going to spend this kind of money, we need to do it right and not do kind of we just need to do it right, okay? So, all right. For anything else from Q&D? We look forward to working with you guys. You got a good team there, so make sure you tell your bosses back there. You're it, huh? Well, all right.
Big dogs.
You're the big dogs, okay. All right. We got any public comment on this issue? Anybody want to weigh in? I don't see any. Okay, board, what do you want to do? Motion's in order, go.
I move to approve contract number 1314-132B, Water Resource Recovery Facility Phase 1A, Construction Manager at Risk, Construction Services, to KG Walters Construction / Q&D Construction, a joint venture, for an amount not to exceed $29,991,581 to be funded from the Sewer Capital Construction Fund as provided in fiscal years 2015-16, 2016-17, 2017-18, and 2018-19.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I think somebody's waiting for me to amend it to also include the staff direction as discussed today.
Right.
Second.
Right, understood. Okay.
Good job.
On the motion, discussion's in order. Supervisor Shirk.
It's a complicated system we go through. If you look back in, not this administration, but the prior administration, prior staff at the Public Works, improvements were not made. From my investigation, from my perspective, that should have been made on a regular basis, ongoing year after year. We never made those improvements, ever, but we used the reserve fund from the sewer and water plant for other purposes. Mistakes were made, and now today, residents' fees that they pay just doubled, tripled, and people are having a hard time financially making ends meet. I voted against this on the basis of how we increase the rates overnight. And I'm not in favor of those rates going forward. I think we could have done something as we did with the downtown corridor. Maybe we could have took a bond out and have a sales tax or something. I'm not saying we can. I don't know the legal ramifications of it, but there should have been some alternative decisions or opportunities for us, and we didn't have that. All we did was increase rates on citizens, which created a hardship. I voted no on this in the past, and I will vote no today as well. But I understand what staff is facing out there, but it was pushed onto this board and this administration from the previous ones, and we never corrected what was done wrong back then, and we're paying for it today. I understand that, but in principle, I don't like the rate increases.
Okay, on the motion, discussion further? Hearing none, all in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Did you get that? 4-1, okay. Thanks very much. All right, let's take up the next item, Laura.
All right, this is, do you want me to wait?
No, go ahead.
Okay. This is to approve contract 1415-213, Water Resource Recovery Facility Phase 1A upgrades for special inspections and material testing to construction materials engineers for an amount not to exceed $998,639 to be funded from the Sewer Capital Construction Fund for fiscal year 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18. 17-18, which was inadvertently left off on the staff report, it is covered in the contract for clarification.
Do we have any questions from the board? Jim?
I asked Dave if you could, why this professional services was not put out to bid as well.
Supervisor Shirk, this again is a professional service, and professional services pursuant to NRS are not suitable to bidding.
Thank you for the clarification. And I also asked how much funding is for special inspections and how much is for material testing?
There's a table in the exhibit. I have to go and take a look at that. And I don't remember the exact percentage, but the majority of it was for special inspections, and a small component of it was for the laboratory testing. If you just give me a moment, I can find that table and give you those numbers. So as part of it, Exhibit A, there's a table in there that says summary of fees. And it shows the total, it shows each year, and across the top it shows CME, Loomis, 5% contingency. And so the CME aspect is the construction services. That total is a little over $885,000. And then the Loomis with the contingency, those two together look like about a little over $100,000.
Sorry. Oops. This is also because the funding for this mechanism is through the increased sewer fees, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other board questions on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for motion.
I move to approve contract number 1415-213, Water Resource Recovery Facility Phase 1A upgrades, special inspections and materials testing to Construction Materials Engineers, Inc., for an amount not to exceed $998,639 to be funded from the Sewer Capital Construction Fund account provided in fiscal year 2015-16, 16-17, and 17-18.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Jim?
For the same reason I voted against the first one, I will be voting against this one. The increased rates, I do not favor. Thank you.
I'll just make a comment. While we may not like the increased rates, the point that's been made today is our sewer plant will fail. And I think we have an obligation as a board to provide the basic human life safety needs of this community, which is the sewer plant. So regardless of whether I like how the rates were established or what was done, it is paramount that we have an operational sewer plant. So I don't have a problem voting for this.
To go back to what Lori said, there was an obligation from previous boards and previous staff members to make sure that this never got to this predicament that we're in today. And we're paying the price for mistakes made in the past. You may not like it, but I don't like the increased rates that were put upon us. And we could have found alternative funding mechanism, and we never looked for it.
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
All right, let's take up the next item. This is the juvenile detention fence parking. Who's going to do that, Laura?
All right, this is to approve contract 1516-088 for the juvenile detention fenced parking area to RMAC Construction for a bid amount of $128,131, with a contingency amount of $12,813 for a total amount not to exceed $140,944 to be funded from the Capital Project and Capital Outlay Courts Fund.
I could give you a brief overview of what this is. The project manager is here if you would like to talk about specifics. Basically, what we're doing here, a capital project to perform some fence parking out at the detention center, specifically for the court. It was determined that it was a safety issue in protecting those vehicles as well as the occupants as they come and go. So it's been in the works just a couple of years, maybe over 2 years now. The biggest problem was trying to come up with the amount of funding needed to build it to a level where we would accomplish the need in terms of security, but also keep it minimal so that we weren't spending a bunch of money we didn't have. So if there's specific questions, we can answer those.
Is it included in the budget?
It was.
Darren, just for the record, I know it says in our package, but just for the record, why was Justin Wilson Construction deemed non-responsive, and was there a bid protest filed?
The reason the bid documents state that 50% or more of the bid amount has to be done by the contractor placing the bid, and he did not follow that qualification, so he was deemed non-responsive and no protest was filed. He understood he made the mistake.
Jim.
It's probably everyone's question. On the funding source, in the future, could we see how much is in each fund before we approve the contracts? I've asked for this before, but on page 437, it says financial information. It says the account number, but it doesn't say how much is in the account, and we're approving something, and we don't know how much is in the account.
We'll make that change moving forward.
Okay. Any other questions of the board? Public comment, anybody? Okay, motion's in order. Supervisor Abel.
I move to determine that RMAC Construction is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder pursuant to NRS 338, and to award contract number 1516-088, juvenile detention fence parking area to RMAC Construction for a bid amount of $128,131 plus a contingency amount of $12,813 for a total not to exceed amount of $140,944 to be funded from the Capital Project and Capital Outlay Court Funds as provided in fiscal years 15 and 16.
Second.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. That one is unanimous. Okay. Let's take up the landfill tipper.
All right, this is to approve contract 1516-076 for a landfill tipper with South Tahoe Refuse and Recycling and Douglas Disposal and Recycling Services for disposal of solid waste at the Carson City landfill. South Tahoe and Douglas will purchase a landfill tipper to bring solid waste to the landfill in exchange for a reduced rate and repayment for the equipment financing.
Okay.
You like an overview?
We'd like an overview, and why don't you introduce our guests here today?
Okay,
the
very
South
good.
Lake Tahoe folks.
Very good. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because I won't get their last names right. Just a general overview, and we can get into more specifics. Is right now this group is taking their waste up to Washoe County, and the plan here is we sat down and discussed, is there a way that they wouldn't have to carry it so far, trucking so far, and yes, we are closer as a landfill. The problem that we came up against was the method of delivery of that trash. Once it got to the landfill, how would it be unloaded? So that's where the tipper comes in. So that's a general overview. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and then David can provide specifics. Go ahead.
I'm Terry Treese.
The microphone.
You gotta hit the microphone.
Terry Treese, I'm the controller.
Hi, Terry.
Jeff Tillman, president. John Martini, work with South Tahoe Refuse Company.
How you guys doing today? It's always a pleasure to see you South Lake Tahoe folks down here. You guys I've been up to your operation up there. You run a slick operation, and in an area that's environmentally sensitive, pretty darn good. So I don't know what it has to do with this, but just want to let you know. All right, go.
So just a high-level overview of our current landfill, and it's sort of in your description. I received some good questions from the board members this week, and one of the things that I think was clear that I just didn't do a good enough job explaining what a landfill tipper was. So I have a little 1-minute video of what a landfill tipper is, and we'll just go through that, and then I just want to kind of go through this process.
Does it have music? Or
I don't know. No.
You narrate it.
It's you.
Okay, so I'm the narrator. So the truck backs into the landfill tipper. That big structure is actually the landfill tipper itself. So you have a truck that contains the trash back into this tipper. The truck unhooks, and then the tipper actually tips it up, so the trash falls out of the back end. And then what you'll see, then the tipper goes back down, connects to the truck drives off. And then you have the landfill equipment pushing the trash away from the back end, the compactors, the dozers, pushing it away from the back end. So that was from the manufacturer. That's what a landfill tipper is, and it's just under a $500,000 piece of equipment. And what this proposal agreement is, a subscription agreement, is working with South Tahoe Refuse and Douglas County Disposal, so that we would receive a minimum amount of trash from them. And when we say trash, we break it into 2 categories. We call it MSW, which is municipal solid waste. That's your household trash. As part of this agreement, we'll receive a minimum quantity of trash. And then the other component is C&D, construction and demolition. And again, we broke that out separate, so we'll receive a minimum amount of that quantity. So it gives them the opportunity. It's a win-win situation because it brings revenue into the city, and it's a benefit to them that they have fantastic rates up at Waste Management. But this was a negotiated agreement to help them and help us. So our landfill, currently receives about 480 tons of trash a day. That's on average what we receive right now. And we're actually the 3rd largest landfill in the state itself. And one of the things, we generate about $3.8 million a year in revenue from the landfill. Of that 3.8, the landfill keeps 1.3 of that. That's what we use as an operating budget, and about $2 million of that goes back to the general fund. That was changed back in 2008, 2009 during the downturn. The landfill used to be a proprietary fund where the rates generated supporting the landfill, but the bigger needs of the city came in and it became a general fund line item. So what happened is that $1.3 million it's not sustainable for the landfill. The hard decisions had to be made back then, but we're seeing it in our equipment failure, just like the sewer plant. We're seeing a lot of failures of equipment and what we have. So while I'd love to say, could we have that $2 million back to have a sustainable, I understand that's not, going to happen either. So as part of that is we can do a beneficial relationship to where we bring in additional revenue into the landfill that's going to help support some of those operations. This agreement will generate about $500,000 in additional revenue. Not all that money, of course, is going to go, there's an operating cost associated with it. It costs us a little over $8 a ton to deal with the trash, the landfill, the people, the equipment. So that's not net profit. After subtracting that out, there will be a net profit with it. This agreement says basically the way that the trash is handled, we have to have a landfill tipper. They would purchase the tipper. We would use the tipper. After 5 years, for every month, we will credit them what the cost of the amortization table, what the cost of that tipper is monthly. And then at the end of 5 years, the tipper becomes our asset. So after that, our net profits will increase at the landfill. As part of this agreement, it's going to take support staff to run it. That's all part of our calculations that we did. We would have to add an additional landfill worker. And the other component is we have to rebuild a piece of equipment, compactor, to the tune of about $600,000. So those two things would be essential to be able to work this agreement. But those costs were included in this, so it's still a net gain, a net benefit to the city to do this.
David, how does this shorten does this shorten the life of the landfill?
Thank you. I was going to bring that up, and I'd forgot. The current life of the landfill, every year we're required under NRS to do landfill life expectancy, and it's done based on a volume calculation. So you bring in so much volume of trash, you got to squish it down with the heavy equipment, and we anticipate this would decrease the life of the landfill about approximately 5 years. Our current rough estimate for life of the landfill is about 48 years. And this has the potential to decrease upwards of 5 years the life of the landfill.
What's the estimated useful life of the tipper?
Estimated useful life of the tippers, of course, going to depend on how much it's used, but 15 to 20 years is a reasonable life for a tipper.
And this is new?
Yes, it is a new piece of equipment.
Okay. So at the end of the initial 10-year term, if the contract is not extended for whatever reason, what would the plans be? Would we continue to use the tipper? Would we go out and try to find other municipalities or customers that would provide business for that, or would we sell it? What's plan B?
Well, after 10 years, I mean, there are a couple different options. We have not fully explored all those options. One of the reasons we need a tipper is because the way their trash collection method is. Like Waste Management currently uses trucks that do the compression itself. In this case, there's no compressions. It's put into a trailer and dumped. And there are potential sources that we might be able to use for other users down the road for that.
Our information says that South Tahoe, Douglas County will supply personnel to run the tipper on site, but you also just said that it would require Carson City to add an FTE. So we're talking both?
So, yeah, what the proposal is that their staff, their truck driver, would operate the tipper itself, and that's a practice currently being done up at Waste Management at Lockwood. So the truck driver operates the piece of equipment. And that was part of an agreement between us because, again, it's just a resource. How often the trucks come in, when they come in. Each cycle time to run the truck is approximately 3 minutes. It's not a big resource. But if we have to pull an operator off the hill, compacting trash, moving dirt, there's an additional time to get to and for. So that was part of an agreement, and it's something that's currently being done. The additional landfill worker is to support the additional trash. So right now, when we did the cuts to the landfill back in 2008 or 9, there was a reduction in personnel both in the scale house and on the hill. And we received more trash than we did back then, and we're bursting at the seams. So without the additional landfill worker, we can't keep up with the trash that'll come in.
What is alternative daily cover material, and what's it used for?
Alternative daily cover material. So under our permit, we're required to cover all the refuse daily. So what happens is we put out tarps on a daily basis. The permit requires us to put a cap at the end of the working face, requires us to put a 6 to 12 inches of dirt. We use a significant amount of dirt. There'll be an action item coming up next board meeting on dirt. Dirt's of value to us because we use 50,000 cubic yards a year, 50 to 60 of dirt just covering these active cells. And that's a permit requirement because of, it's vector control really, so we have to cover the trash. So alternate daily cover are looking at other ways besides using just dirt. And it's a small volume, but they might be able to explain exactly the ADC, but it's a byproduct of their C&D process. And it's not a huge volume, but it could be a benefit to us. So what our plan is to receive the ADC for free, and then we will work with NDEP over the next year to get it permitted to cover our trash with that. So it'll be a benefit to us and to them also.
So is that correct? It's like a chip mulch then?
Turn on there you go. And maybe John D can explain a little bit better, but it is a byproduct of the C&D. Currently, when we collect C&D up at the lake, we trommel it and we clean it and everything else, and the dirt and the residue that falls loose from that, that's considered the alternative daily cover. So, we produce quite a bit of that during the summer months up there with the C&D, and that's the material we'd like to bring down here and, use as alternative daily cover. I don't know if you want to add to it.
Just for clarification, sir, it's not chip or mulch, so it's not wood chip material, it's actual dirt that comes from the C&D processing.
The mechanism to lift the trailer dumps whatever contents is in it. From that point, then the landfill must send a loader or something over to pick it up, to haul it to the right place within the landfill, correct?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the tipper is portable, actually. And so what happens, it has wheels and it has a dolly. We'll hook it up to our equipment and tow it to the appropriate places. But what happens is once it tips it up, the trash falls out the back, then you have a piece of equipment, a dozer, a compactor, pushing it and leveling it, pushing it to where it needs to go. Once that, we call them cells or active faces, once that area is built up, then we'll move the tipper to the next area. So as a landfill is built, if you look at a landfill over the period of a year, obviously you're bringing in infill, and so the whole dynamics of it change. So yes, it's a portable piece of equipment that we move around the landfill.
So you would have to know, as the trucks arrive, then you move the tipper? Or will you know ahead of time and have the tipper moved, or how's that
Absolutely, we would know ahead of time. I mean, it's all part of a plan. The tipper doesn't get moved on a daily basis. It's the first time we've had exposure to this, so we will have to determine that process. I'm imagining something like on a quarterly basis type concept, it may get moved, but I think as we get some experience with it, then we'll have a much better answer.
And from the presentation you gave, our landfill is the third largest in the state. I was really surprised by that, actually. And I'm still taken back that we don't have a recycling program at the third largest landfill in the state of Nevada. We have no recycling. And is that something that, you don't have to discuss it, but I hope that's something that's on the horizon. If we're making improvements, this is one area we could look at. Where you unload these trucks presently at Washoe and Lockwood, do they have a tipper there as well?
Yeah, Lockwood Landfill has 2 tippers there.
And what fee do you pay at Lockwood to dump versus what you pay here in Carson?
South Tahoe Refuse pays $17 a ton at Lockwood, and Douglas Disposal pays about $14 a ton.
And what will you be paying here?
We'd be paying the $24 a ton, the in-town price.
And why is it, I asked the question of staff, why don't we just buy the tipper ourselves rather than do all this? What is the cost? Did we ever get an estimate on a tipper cost? How does that weigh out versus what we're doing on this lease fee situation versus if we just bought the tipper outright? Why can't we do that?
I mean, that is an option, a possibility. We did work with finance on it, and I talked to Nancy yesterday about that question. And finance did reach out to our financial consultants and looked at different options from lease purchases. There was a bunch of different options listed, but really this was the best option. There's still a very elaborate process, and the city takes on the debt to do this. And so I think this is a very fair and equitable offer to do it this way. So we felt this was the best option.
Thank you.
Okay, I thought maybe all my questions were going to get answered, but they left one for me. No, okay. If you look on page 496, and number 8D, so I'm interested in understanding, at the end of the 5 years, we have amortized the tipper, and they've paid $24 for the rate. Then it indicates that we will, for the next 5 years of the contract, begin an indexing process. I'm trying to get a handle on what if in 5 years our current rate that we charge our locals is $27? Where are we indexing from, and how does that start? I don't want the general public paying more. Am I on your other question?
Question and answer right here.
Oh, so I thought he left one for me. Why isn't that just at the end of the 5-year loan period, the current rate? in-county rate will then be indexed? Because I don't want to set up an unfair answer for
I can address that question because Supervisor Bunkowski had asked a very similar question, I think identical. So what this is, and I want to separate the two types of trash that we talked about. So what this agreement says is that the current agreement is the $24 a ton. That happens to be our in-county rate currently, but we're saying that our agreement is that it'll stay fixed at $24 a ton for the first 5 years during the repayment process. After that, the suggestion was to tie it to a trash index, and then it would go up or change according to that trash index. So this agreement is not based for MSW. This agreement is not based on our rates. So if our rates go up, if our rates change, this agreement stays steady. This is a 5-year, well, it's a 10-year agreement, but it's a 5-year fixed agreement for the first 5 years. After that, it indexes. With C&D, we tied it to the existing rates. So if the rates change with construction and demolition, then they would adjust accordingly. So the 24 happens to be our in-county rate right now, but this agreement is not tied to the in-county rate.
But I'm trying to understand why not. That's what I'm getting to, is that's what we charge the residents of Carson City for municipal solid waste. And we're already going to give them the in-county rate because they're going to give us a piece of equipment. And so I think that's the fair trade that we're doing. So why aren't we going to continue to tie it to the rate?
I think it comes down to and maybe they can explain, but to more of a business model in terms of them figuring out how their business is moving forward, and we have to do it by a clumping of time. And for this is, we made it at a 10-year contract, so they can tie into their business model what it's specifically going to cost to bring trash to our landfill. If we developed the contract and said that the rate would be based on anything that the city decides to do in terms of rates, instead of 24 in year 4, if we raise our rates to $30 a ton, all of a sudden that doesn't pencil out for them, and they're stuck in the contract. So
Okay, so I could live, but could an index make it go lower, right? The index could be negative, so it would be less than 24?
yes, although
So can we-
that was not our intent, that it would go lower.
All right, so would everybody agree we could add, but not less than $24? So at least, do you see what I'm getting at? I don't want you to turn around and get a $22 rate and the Carson City taxpayers paying 24. So I could be comfortable if everyone would agree we would just add not less than $24.
Yeah, that's
Is that
fine.
okay?
Yes.
See where okay, thank you.
And just for your information too, like we ran the index back for the last 20 years. It's never been negative, but that's fine to put in.
Just saw our property tax hit negative over a 9-year average, so if we could just add that it wouldn't be, I'd be comfortable. Thank you.
So Lori, just so you know what my suggestion was if they want to freeze the rate for the first 5 years, that's in the contract. That allows you guys to have a set budget during the repayment period. But then to adjust the rate to the then in-county rate and then apply the CPI.
On the MSW?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then everybody's paying the same rate.
Let me see what they say.
Okay.
It's hard for us to not knowing what the city might set that rate at to then commit to a 10-year period. So I think what we'd be willing to do if we wanted to do that, if you shorten the contract to 5 years, so we know over the 5 years, once that debt's been paid off, then we'd have the flexibility. If the city rate were to go too high, we would have an option to say then it makes more sense for us business-wise to go to Lockwood. The city would then, you wouldn't really be out anything. You might have a piece of equipment you didn't, if it's not utilized, it wouldn't maybe cost you anything, but we would have the flexibility if it made sense business-wise at whatever the new rate was. We'd be happy to continue here. If the rate was too high, then it might not make business sense and we'd have to return to Lockwood.
But at that point, we wouldn't have the revenue coming from you for the additional 5 years to pay for the $600,000 in repairs on the compactor or the FTE that we're adding.
Let's go with not less than $24 as a guarantee to the taxpayer. Okay. And you already agreed to that, right? That you're willing to at least not less than the $24, you would accept that as an amendment?
Yes, that's correct. We agree to that.
Okay. Anybody else? Do you guys do single stream up there, Tahoe?
John Marchini, South Tahoe Refuse. No, we run a dirty MRF up in South Lake Tahoe. So all of our collection is done with one collection vehicle. It's brought into our materials recovery facility, and that's where we sort out the trash, the recyclables. For our customers who really want to be involved in our recycling program, hands-on, we do a blue bag program. So that blue bag is in with the regular trash. We can spot the blue bag, pull that aside, sort it separately, but then we're also going through the remainder trash for the recyclable materials that are in there.
How long have you been doing that up at South Lake Tahoe?
We opened our materials recovery facility in 1994.
And how much tonnage do you get recycled? Just out of curiosity, do you have a rough idea?
I don't have an idea of the tonnage, but I can tell you that out of all the material that come into our facilities, we're diverting 63% to reuse or recycling markets.
And how would Carson City have such a program as this, as recycling as up at South Lake Tahoe?
I think I would go back to the mayor's question, and I would say that single stream in this area makes great sense because you have a lot of permanent residents. If we were handling it, it would definitely be a single stream in this area.
So when our contract comes up, would you bid at, would you come down here and make a bid for this?
We won't hold you to that. Just keep your eye out, okay? All right. You don't happen to know how your curbside rates track with what we have down here, do you? Your curbside pickup rates?
I'm not sure what your rates are down here, so I'm not sure if they're comparable or not. I do know that one difference with our rates in the city of South Lake Tahoe and El Dorado County, it's mandatory for our residents to have trash service, but then it's also unlimited. So they can put out as much household waste, including their green waste, their pine needles, as they have.
So between here and there, it's a question of one, mandatory, and two, it's a question of cost.
Yes.
If you go single stream or whatever, okay, all right. Okay. Anything anybody wants to add?
Yeah, one more thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Can I get your contact information before you leave? Or could you leave it with the secretary over here, please?
Absolutely. We'll definitely leave contact information. And then if I could just add, this has been our first opportunity to work with Darren and David, and I just wanted to extend my appreciation. It's been very seamless.
Yeah, and I'll just gratuitously add, I've met with these gentlemen several times, and I got to tell you, they're some of the most professional people I've ever run into. They deal in a difficult area, and they're always very upfront. And I know Terry lives here in Carson City, so if something, he's a ratepayer down here. He's smiling. How's your rates, Terry? Okay, all right. We're ready for a motion?
No public comment.
Oh, public comment first, I'm sorry. Did I miss that? Anybody want to weigh in on the tipper? No tips? Motion's in order. Go.
Okay.
Include the
I move to
24.
approve contract number 1516-076 landfill tipper with South Tahoe Refuse and Recycling, Douglas Disposal and Recycling Services for disposal, that's a good one, of solid waste at the Carson City landfill, and to amend 8D to include not less than a $24 rate.
Motion in a couple seconds on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thanks. Have a safe trip back up to the top up there. Okay, guys. All right. Break. Let's take a quick break for 5 minutes. I apologize. I had to take one before, but it's always good.
You don't get one now.
I don't get one now. All right. We'll be in recess for till 11:15 or so.
We all should.
Let's take up 12A. Mr. Fletcher, alternative sentencing annual review. Go, Tad.
Hello, Tad Fletcher, Chief of the DAS, for the record. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Board of Supervisors. I'm here to do an overview of 2015 for our statistics and kind of do a projection to the future where I think we might want to go. We have a few projects going before we get into that. We're looking at doing a lean event on the department to try to get our department working efficiently and kind of hitting our goals and our benchmarks to get where we want to go. And then after that, we'll go from there. So I'm not quite sure how to turn this up on the...
I was wondering if we're going to... I thought it was that was a pretty good video right there.
The ghost video.
The ghost video. We'll get some help here. Get some cops. They don't know how to run the IT. Get the Marines over there to fix it.
Can't do a camera. Let's see how he does on the computer.
Get the Marines. Yeah. Bring your camera over there, Nick.
Did we turn off? Oh, there.
There it is. It was unplugged.
See, you got there and it turned right on.
There's a reason I don't work for IT.
Don't know where the on button is? That's okay.
All right. Real quick, last year we all worked on our strategic plan for the city, and to give an idea to the board and the general public on how we fit into that. Under safety, we provide effective probation, supervision, and pretrial services to prevent crimes and make our neighborhoods safe for our residents to live, work, and play. Our objectives to achieve that goal, we increase public safety through holding offenders accountable. We link offenders through evidence-based rehabilitation services and reduce recidivism. We partner with the courts to enforce all the conditions of their probation, and we assist in pretrial diverters and successfully following the release conditions that are placed on by the courts.
Can we ask questions as we go, Mayor? Let's do it. Okay. When you say partner with the courts, can you elaborate on that, how you partner with the courts?
Absolutely. We do have an MOU with the courts, so we're slightly different.
Sorry, no abbreviations. So what was you have a what at the court?
We have we have a memorandum of understanding with the courts. We're slightly different than other DAS offices around the state. There's 4 of us. We're the only one that provides court security. So we stand in and we provide security for the building itself and security for the judges when in need. We also supervise anybody that's on formal probation that's placed on by the courts, people that are placed on pretrial supervision, bail release supervision, and we also supervise individuals in district court that are on bail release pretrial and the DUI diversion program for third-time offenders. And then we also supervise mental health court and misdemeanor treatment court that is new this past year.
So collaboration between you and the court system or the judges, do you meet regularly, annually?
We have officers that are in weekly staffing in the specialty courts and a case manager. And then we try to meet once a week. Sometimes usually it's on the run when I meet with the judges, but we're always communicating and trying to keep building that bridge and going that way. You bet. We also, under the strategic plan, the sustainable infrastructure, we support environments that foster a viable, livable community while bolstering the economic growth. And how we do that is we get a lot of people that come in, and now, instead of reading that verbatim, I'll explain what program we have. We have an intern through WNC that comes in, and that individual gets 6 college credits. So we task that college intern with assisting people on our caseload with creating resumes. We send them to job fairs. They help them with job applications. They give them worksheets. They refer them out if they have in need of housing. If they don't have a GED, they help them get their GEDs. And at a certain point, we help step them toward that direction of getting into WNC and trying to help better themselves to be part of the local workforce and actually create a solid workforce and get them to be viable in our community again. which is huge to rehabilitation. It's good for them, it's good for the community, it's good for everybody. And it's very successful. And I'll tell you, you get a college intern that's in there. A lot of these people, they don't have that person that's ever really showed them how to do a resume or an application. And when you have an intern there that in college and going through all that motion, they're excited. The energy that young people bring, it's amazing. And so we've really tried to capture that. And that plays into the third part of the strategic plan. By doing that, it's we're getting into the families. We're helping people. As you know, we have a lot of families that live in some of the month-to-month housing and all of that. And we're trying to get these people, when we see needs of kids, kind of pointing them in the directions to help past just what our mission is of supervision. If we see a need, we refer out. So we're trying to help.
When you say month to month, is that some of the hotels here in town?
It is, it is.
Is there specifically any one particular hotel, or you just?
We have people all over, and sometimes they move from one to the next. Occasionally you find we have people on our caseload that are homeless, so we're working with them.
How many people right now are you helping with housing?
I'd have to go back and look at and talk to the intern on that one. It's hit and miss. There's sometimes we don't have anybody, and then it comes in waves. You'll end up with a few individuals, and then it just goes from there and it goes back down. So, all right. Any other questions before I move on? All right. Some of the duties that we do at the Department of Alternative Sentencing is we supervise the misdemeanor probationers, defendants of bail condition, pre-trial and pre-sentence conditions. We are in the specialty courts, and we just started the misdemeanor treatment court this last July in partnership with Judge Armstrong, and that program's growing and it's very successful. We have a long-term one that's been in effect with Judge Tatro with mental health court, and that's very successful. And then we have the third DUI diversion program. We've had those numbers upwards of 30 people on our caseload, and right now we're running about 18, but those come out of district court, and people have to qualify for these programs. They're just not automatically placed in those.
Sorry to so many questions. I apologize.
Yes.
Can you please elaborate on the DUI third diversion? What does that entail? And I know we're going to be coming to it, but just what is it?
Those are individuals that have 3 or more DUIs on their record. They're facing a prison sentence. And instead of going to prison, it allows them to stay in the community and work and function. And it's a 3-year program, very intensive. They have electronic monitoring that monitors if they've been drinking. They're under house arrest programs. They have a GPS monitor on them. We know where they're at. We know what they're doing. They have counseling they have to go to. They have to come to court on weekly. And then as they go through the 3-year program, their time of reporting goes from 1 week, and it just slowly decreases through the month as they go through. But with that, we're doing home visits on them. We're making sure they're in compliance with their conditions at their residences. We make sure that they go to all their counseling visits, and we do all that. It's very intensive on those people.
Is there a reason you wait for the third arrest and you don't do it at the second arrest?
Actually, under the misdemeanor treatment program, that is targeting drug offenders. We have people outside of the age range, but the concept behind it was targeting individuals from 18 to 25 years of age, and that is people with drug problems, alcohol problems, and any kind of addiction problem that goes with that. So we're trying to get that in that court before that addiction takes over and continues. Then we also, we'll move on here, we conduct pre-arraignment screenings. We supervise house arrest programs. We assign community service. We collect supervision fees. We provide security to the courts. We assist with the bailiffs and marshals on a relief. If a bailiff or marshal goes out, then one of our staff members step in and fill in that need in the courtroom. 3 to 4 times a year, we go out and we assist with the victim impact panel. And what we do with that, and it's a great partnership with the DUI task force, we go out there and we do all the preliminary breath tests for people that partake in the program, and they don't allow anybody in that's been drinking. And if it's people from Carson City that's locally that have no drinking clauses, we'll take those people in, and it's amazing. We get people probably 1 or 2 every time that show up that's been drinking, trying to go through these driver impact panels that are required by the courts through their DUI process. And, but through that, the DUI task force also awards us with our preliminary breath testing machines. So it's a great partnership. And then our LEAP program, our Learning Enhancement Academic Program, that's through our college intern. Give you some quick numbers for our statistics. Our average monthly caseload for 2015 was 1,892 people. Out of that, we're a little bit different than other DAS departments, and in a future slide you'll see our caseload. Out of those 1,800, we averaged right about 300 people on formal probation, and those are our people that are on there for 12 months. They mess up, it can be pushed out a little longer. But we're doing home visits on them, we're doing drug testing. Some of them have, you name it, the anger management classes, whatever programs put on them, they have to complete those and report back to us. And then those individuals have to report to our office between the 1st and 5th of every month. And so during a 3 to 5 day period, depending on how many calendar days follow on working days, all 300 of those people are in the office, and it gets pretty busy. Then we have our informal probation side that's, as you can see, it's about 450, and these numbers go up and down. These are individuals that are placed on a suspended sentence, and it's very similar to the next one of court-monitored sentencing, but the courts determine which one they want to place them on. And those people also have parameters, but they don't report to our office. However, some of the informal people, as people go through their probation, if they're successfully completing the program and doing very well, at about the 6th, 7th, 8th month mark, they can request, we can request if people are going good, so we're not wasting resources. We submit to the courts and the judge reviews to approve for them to go over to informal probation. Kind of a reward for doing good. Then we also do the pretrial supervision. And these are all the people that have been arraigned, but they're waiting their trials. They're going through the process. They haven't been found guilty yet. And with those, a lot of those people. Huh?
Say they haven't been found guilty yet.
That's true.
No,
going through the process. They haven't been adjudicated. There you go.
That wasn't a Freudian slip, was it, Chad?
No, not at all. A lot of those individuals are the same as the people on bail condition supervision. They're placed on, not all of them, but people that the courts feel need to be, that have drug problems or alcohol problems or anything related to their offenses. We'll place on our color code drug testing, and we'll, depending on their level of supervision needed, we'll test them anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week down to 2 times a month. And it's kind of a reward program. The longer you stay clean, the less we're going to test you. If you get dirty, you kind of go back through. But it keeps us very busy, and all those people report in for the drug testing. And they're slightly different than probation because they haven't been lost their rights and been found guilty. They're still innocent, so we can't go to their homes and search and all that. So where under formal probation, we'll go to their house, do compliance checks, look under mattresses, drawers, everything else. And then the rest of our caseload, we have felony DUI court. We average, at the time I did these slides, we're 23, we're down to 18. We've had some people go through the program. And then our average monthly number for people that are in an inpatient program was 8 for 2015. And we have people that are in Elko, we have people that are in Reno, we have people that are in Fallon. And we do have the local here. However, some of the things that we found worked by sending people away, it gets them away from their environment, and they don't have individuals here enticing them to come out or walk away from the programs. It's harder for someone in Elko to walk away than it is someone here in Carson City. So during 2015, we had right about 17,000, well, we had 17,440 office visits that were logged in our system. It was our second highest in the last 6 years. Last year was our highest. We had, we knocked on 1,497 doors. It was our highest in 6 years. And out of that, 639 we actually made contact, and another 858 we didn't have contact. And those are people that we continue to try to get a hold of or track down. Then on our drug testing,
One
yes.
other quick question. Why was it office visits the highest in 6 years, second highest in 6 years? Why?
When I became chief in 2013, I can't say for a fact, but I don't believe that the office visits were being tracked properly, so I can't truly say that it was the highest, but since I've been here, it's been our second highest year.
And the non-contact of the 858, does that mean they're no longer at the residence where you're knocking the door at?
Correct. They could either have moved, which is a violation of their probation, their conditions, or they're at work, or they're not home. But we continue to go back, but it's kind of showing, we have a very small field staff, and right now I have one full-time officer in the field and one individual in training and one in backgrounds. So for 3 people, 1,400, that's a lot of doors they're knocking on.
When they go to a resident, are they going as a one person, or do they go in pairs? Your department?
Primarily, it's single officer. We try to get 2 people. It's very hard with our caseload. When we are in Carson City, we're doing single-man visits. When we go out of county, because we do have people that reside in Douglas, Lyon, and Washoe, we try to send 2 people just because of the unknowns in those areas.
Because you're making single visits to residents because you don't have enough staff? Or would you prefer two of your officers go to each door, or you feel safe and confident one can go?
2 officers makes a home visit a lot more successful and a lot safer. When we go into a home, we talk to everybody in the residence. To maintain officer safety, you try to maintain contact with everybody in there, but you're also trying to check a residence and clear. And if you're by yourself, it can be, and it can be very dangerous. And we don't have the staffing to do that on everything. We have, like I said, we have 3. I've been talking to other DAS officers around the state, kind of picking their brain, and I'm getting ideas of what they're doing and what things I could steal to make better for our department and our community. But yeah, we can't send 2 people on every visit. We would never achieve anything, so, right now.
Tad, at what point, or do you send the single officers out with body cameras?
We've implemented body cameras this past year. They're awesome. They're, at any time you can look them up, they're made by Wolfcom. High quality, good video, good sound, and we have a policy now, they record every contact with every member of the public. You bet. And then moving on, our drug test, it's our highest in 6 years, and that's several things. If you look at our annual stats over the last 6 years, some of the probationers are going down, but our bail condition and pretrial is going up, and a lot more of those people are being placed on color code supervision. And we don't have the effective staff to actually be in the field to see these people as much as the courts like. So they're placing more people on color code, so we have more contact with them on a daily basis on individuals they feel need that supervision. So we hit 7,894 drug tests this year. I've recently met with the judges, and we came up with a new way to try to save some money on those drug tests because it is very expensive. We do operate our own lab to cut those costs instead of sending them out to a third party. For an example, if we send out a test and do an 80-hour alcohol test, the company that does the majority of the work in that field, it's about $20 a test, where we can do it in-house for $1. But that's just for alcohol because we have to buy the reagents on those. But last year, we've done 2,799 preliminary breath tests. This year, it's going to go up. I was talking to Washoe County, and they do breath tests on every individual that comes into their office. So everybody that the judges have placed search and seizure clause on, that it gives us a jurisdiction to, we breath test everybody just to make sure that they're not drinking. So straws are cheap. They're about 19 cents a straw. So yeah. Last year, we had 822 violations of supervision, and we conducted 269 arrests, which was a 6% increase since 2014. There's some projected costs on here. It was really hard to come up with some of these to a science. The first line for electronic monitoring, we had, if you took the number of people we had on the number of days under being supervised, we had 6,163 days of supervision of those individuals. And our cost out of our general fund was $29,436,000 to rent that equipment. We received through our supervision fees on those items $55,784, and we used a lot of those other costs to help fund the program because there is man hours involved, and there are people that don't have the funds to pay for their electronic monitoring, so we have to eat those costs. So we kind of try to offset those. I used the projected cost savings in that. I took a national average of jail costs that I found across, it was $53 a day for a jail stay. And it's hard to go into that. Speaking with, actually I was in a meeting last week with Captain Wall from the Sheriff's Office here, and he said their projected costs in Carson goes from about 75 to 95, but then you have costs in there of detention officer pay and all of that. So it's hard to really nail down a cost. You start inheriting people's medical problems and all that, and it really starts eating away. So what I did is
But the end result, Tad, is you either monitor them or they're in jail.
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's a cost associated with one or the other. I got it, so, yeah.
Yeah,
I think we got
for
it.
those people, if they were in jail, that would have been $326,000 at the national average cost. And then we do, under our intensive supervision, this is really hard. I met with the judges, and there's no real sound number of how many people that are in our program that would be in jail. It's a case-by-case basis. The way they described it, the people that come into our office that are on daily reporting, daily breath testing, or aggressive drug testing, a lot of those people would be the people that would be in jail if we weren't there. So I just threw a number out of, say, 50 people, which I'm sure it's far greater than that, but I took the number of 50 people, the number of calendar days times the 53, and that comes out to just under $1 million a year in cost savings to supervise. And the drug testing, I put in what it would be to supervise those people for the calendar year, and that's $32,000 that's out of our pocket to drug test those people. So there is a cost savings to have them out, but if some of these people do violate, they do end up back in jail. It's kind of it's nature of the beast. In 2015, through supervision fees, we collected $92,986. And our supervision fees, people on formal probation pay a $50 a month probation fee. If they can't afford that, we do work it out in community service or other measures and get them out into the community doing different jobs. Drug testing, we didn't have a full calendar year on that fee that we implemented last year, but this past year we collected $16,367 in drug testing fees. And then community service hours, we had 25,000 hours worked in our community through community service, which came out to, we collected $14,554 on the setup fees. And then miscellaneous fees, we collected just over $1,000. It's kind of a quick look at how we're laid out. We have myself, Assistant Chief Guthrie, and then we have a case manager that is a grant position, and then our DAS supervisor who works in our office and oversees our techs at the window. We have our DS officers, we have 3 full-time and 3 part-time. And I have another slide that breaks those down on what their jobs are exactly. And then we have 5 part-time employees that provide court security at the front doors of the building. And then our DAS technicians that do all the window check-ins, we have 1 full-time, there's 2 part-time, but really one of those part-time techs never work at the window. She works in our lab, comes in, and
If I could ask a question on that chart?
Absolutely.
And who do you report directly to?
Through statute, I answer to the board, but through the city manager's contract, I answer to the city manager.
And that statute, do you happen to know the statute?
It's under Chapter 211A.
211A. So do you, and kind of allude to this question, do you meet quarterly or anything with, let's say, with the court system, with the DA, and with the sheriff, and with the city manager? Is there ever an ongoing conversation with all parties involved?
We talk. talk, but it could be better. We have a building user meeting that's the second week of every month now. It was just changed, where we're all in the same room. It's everybody that's in the building, and we bring up issues or needs and concerns and talk.
So how often does that happen?
The second week of every month.
That second week, the judges are there?
Yes, all the
DA,
judges, the district
everybody?
attorney, the sheriff, myself.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank
everybody.
you.
And before I move on, I wanted to say one thing about our 2 part-time techs. Both, we're getting ready to bring one on board, but both of them were interns from WNC, so it's been kind of nice. They come in, they learn the process. They get a part-time job. We pay them a little bit better than they would find at some of the other part-time jobs in town, and again, it gives them work experience. The one intern that's in our lab wants to be a criminalist working in a lab, so she's kind of getting that experience. So it's kind of fun to watch these kids come in and take off with their career. So a quick layout of how we're assigned and what we do. Myself, I take care of the administrative duties, and then we work daily compliance. And with that, I come in and we check. And Assistant Chief Guthrie, he takes care of the field side and compliance. So in the mornings, we come in and we look and see who was arrested in the last 24 hours. Was anybody on our caseload? What conditions were violated? And we write reports from there. We look to see who didn't show up for drug testing, and we go from there and start writing violations, warrants, send the guys out to find them. And then we do a monthly rake report where we look to see which probationer didn't check in that month, where they're at. So it gets very grounding. I mean, it seems like you never get out of the office. You're always going through reports and reading on everybody. So, and then we have our DAS supervisor. She's not sworn. She takes care of our civilian staff and our general office. And then we have our DUI case manager. That position's grant funded through OTS, and she sits in the mental health court, the misdemeanor treatment court, and the DUI court. And she helps prepare case plans, and she helps with the drug lab also. She goes in there and assists with that caseload. Then we have our 3 officers that are in the field that do home visits. We're currently down to one full-time guy. Like I said, one's being trained, so they're acting as one unit. He hasn't been released yet. And then our 3rd position, we still have someone in background that we haven't filled the position. We're trying. We had 2 officers leave here at the end of the year, so we're trying to play catch-up now. And then I have 2 part-time officers. The next 2, they do assist with the drug testing. They have spent a lot of time this year providing assistance in the courtrooms, doing vacation coverage and family sick and all of that. And then they go in the field when they can. If I had to do it percentage-wise, I would say they're probably in the field 5% of the time. They're in the courtroom probably 50% of the time, and then in the office doing drug testing the remainder of the time. And then the other part-time officer, he works from 6 a.m. to about 10, and he comes in. He'll do with some drug testing, but he does all the backgrounds getting ready for the court hearings that day and kind of doing a pre-arraignment assessment. And then we have 1 technician that works full-time on the window, and then 1 part-time that helps fill in, and then we have 1 in the lab. This is a quick overview, and I'll go through this super fast. There's only 4 DAS agencies in the state, and when you look at it, it looks like we have a lot of officers, but when you really break down the tasks, and Henderson was really intriguing on how they set up theirs. When they first started, they developed their department after Carson City's model, and from there they've grown. They have 4 officers, and those officers are in the field all the time. They're never in the office. And they have 2 compliance investigators. They're non-sworn civilian staff that do all the compliance stuff that Tim and I normally do in the office. And then they have 2 techs that work the window, but they have 4 case managers. And they really go through, they have their own in-house counseling programs. They're not resourcing it out. They really monitor their people. Washoe County, their people are always in the field. They have a court services at Washoe that does a lot of the office intake stuff. And then they have a few individuals that work in the office, the techs, but their officers are in the field. And then Douglas County has 3 officers, and they're kind of in the boat we are. a lot of people and not enough officers to be in the field like we'd like to. And then they have a ton of part-time. The other agencies all use part-time officers. The same, where we get tied up inside, their people are doubling up and they do two-man visits on everything. Our caseloads, this one was really interesting. Carson City, you go through our staff that I kind of broke down, we have 1,892. Henderson has 1,800. And it can be kind of taken in the wrong light when you look at that, where you've already seen what we supervise. Henderson only does formal probation. They're not doing all the pre-sentence and all of that. They're doing 1,800 probationers. Washoe County, they just had a massive bump. They went from just under 800 to 1,100. I got this number right after the first of the year, and they said in that last month they took a huge jump to that on their caseload. And those are all formal probation because they don't do pretrial. They have a court services department that does all that. And then Douglas County has 255, and about half of those are, from what I was told, are at warrant. So they have a real small caseload.
On that page, if you add up the numbers, Henderson has 18 personnel, Carson City has 11, but the caseload is the same.
Right, they run, what helps them is they have two teams in the field all the time because they have the two compliance officers in there, and they have their in-house supervision. They have counseling, they have instructors teaching their DOI courses. They have, he said the upwards with different contract employees and different people that come in, they get up to over 20, 25. But these are their hard numbers. These are what's on staff all the time.
So are they offering more services than we are by the number of personnel they have, basically?
Right. They have two-man units on their home visits. They have in-house classes. They're way better service. I'd like to find a time when we get up to full staff, I'd love to go down there and spend a day with them and just go through their operation and really see how they're running things. I think it would be really.
I think the success rate they have would be important as well, and the budget of how much that costs.
Right.
What that could do here, change or improve or something.
Right, our budget, we're just under 1.2 million a year for our budget, and Henderson's, they told me he's sitting at about 1.6 million. But they offer impeccable numbers, but they have a lot of, they utilize their part-time staff differently than we do. So I want to sit down there and I want to see how they're doing it, because I think that could really help us here in Carson City to pick up some of their ideas. This is kind of where I'd like to see us go. And I know that funding comes a long way, and we want to do our lean event and then see what we need. And then if anything comes out of that, then we do like a supplemental budget, and then either we get it this year, next year, whenever, but it's kind of throwing the goal out there that I think would help us streamline things. If we had one more officer and one more tech, the officer would give us two-man teams. We could cover 7 days a week. And if we had a full-time tech, we could stick it to compliance, stick that individual on compliance, and Assistant Chief Guthrie and I would be able to be in the field more with our officers, and we could have upwards of 3 two-man teams at any given time in the field. I did some of the pros on that, kind of to explain. 2 officer visits, it's huge officer safety. I mean, yes, we know who we're dealing with, we know where we're going, but you still have those unknowns. And 7-day-a-week coverage would be nice. We had 7-day-a-week coverage, but we were doing single officer visits, and we're trying to get away from that. Currently now, with our single officers, if we ask for assistance, then we're calling from the sheriff's office, who's also short-staffed. I mean, they go out there and they're busy too. So we work together well, but we're trying to do things better, I guess you could say. And then with our technician, where I would see that individual doing, instead of doing the office or the window, would be doing the drug testing, checking the compliances on all of that, and doing all our monthly, where we wouldn't have sworn staff. We could actually save money hiring someone at a less wage than what we pay for an officer, because with the amount of money that's spent on retirement for police and fire and all that, we could actually use those resources where they're a better fit. So. And then with that, for entry-level positions, for the two would be 138, 134 a year. So, and that's all I have on that.
Very good. Any further questions of Tad? Pretty thorough deal.
Thank you.
And I think, I've talked to the judges a little bit as well on it, and I know everybody's trying to look for ways to save money. But what struck me is how much more we do here in terms of particularly pre-sentence, but pre-trial work that we're doing here, which is a benefit. I mean, there's a cost savings associated with that because they're not in jail. So I appreciate what you guys are doing out there.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else, Tad? Okay. Any public comment on this one? This is for information only? Okay, take us to the next one. You want a grant for the DUI case coordinator?
That is correct.
Anything you got to add that's outside of the board action form?
No, we're looking just for approval to apply for the grant at this time.
Any questions of the board?
Just a comment. This is a current position.
Yes, it is.
And so where it says it's not, it's a yes. So I just wanted the public to realize it's not a new position. It's just getting grant funding again.
Right, right.
And going back to your previous discussion when you said the addition of one more DAS officer would allow 2 office visits to go out. That is not tied to this in any shape or form. So if you need additional, there's no grant money for this position that you mentioned in your earlier agenda?
No, there's officer grants out there, and a lot of them are tied to size of population, and they go into that. And you get funding for an officer, and they pay the salary, we'd have to pay the benefits. But then if you can't find the funding on that officer, some of the downfalls I heard is you go out there, and I think if we qualified, it might be for one individual, and they're anywhere from 1 year to 2 year grants. At the end, if we don't have the money, then we have to lose that individual, so.
I understand what this agenda item is. You're asking for permission
Yeah.
to get the grant. But going back to your previous discussion about the addition of an officer, are you going to come to the board with that as an agenda item to add one in the future?
City Manager, you want to take that on?
Yeah, let me jump on that if you don't mind, Chief. To answer your question, Supervisor, as part of the budget process, this may come back to the board, but what we're doing in the interim, we are doing a complete lean review of all the processes along with the courts. It's going to be a complete diagnostic of the department. It may be one officer, one tech, I don't know. I really want to make sure we have it right. We have all the processes down. We know exactly what the demand is from the courts, and we know exactly what we need not only to ensure officer safety, ensure efficiency, but meet all the requirements that are placed on his department. So if it does come back, it would most likely be part of the budget process.
Thank you.
Other questions on the grant? Public comment? I know we're moving kind of fast, but motion's in order, Supervisor Abel.
I move to approve the grant application process by the Carson City Department of Alternative Sentencing for State of Nevada Department of Public Safety, Office of Traffic Safety Grant to fund a full-time DUI case manager from October 1, 2016 to September 30, 2017.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Let's take the grant for the replacement vests, 12 Charlie, 12C. Anything you got to add to this one other than what's in your board action form?
No, it's, this covers about half the vests, so we'll be on a 2-year cycle. We replaced half last year, and with this grant, we can do the other half this year.
Questions from the public? Seeing none, questions from the board? Got the questions up here. Go.
I'm sorry, who's first? Me?
Go.
Okay, so you're asking, on this agenda, you're asking for the city will have the obligation to come with $3,600, correct?
That is correct.
Does that go through the budget process, or is that just, we can do it at this juncture?
If we get the grant, it'll be 50%. And then I've put into the, It's sitting on the, I'm brain dead, capital outlay, sorry. on the
This would be a budget augmentation, Supervisor.
The 3,600 would be coming from what fund within the city then? Capital?
On the general.
The general fund?
Just as a comment, we did this last year when we got the grant, so it would be a consistent amount that we would budget next year like we did last year. So it's something that we currently budget. So it's just an ongoing practice.
All right, further questions, discussion? Motion's in order. Supervisor Bunkowski.
I move to approve the grant application process by the Carson City Department of Alternative Sentencing for Department of Justice Body Armor Grant Program.
Second.
Motion, a couple seconds on the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay, let's see if we can do this, folks. We're going to, hang on a second. Let's see if we can get, because I think there's going to be, I don't want to shortchange the open space folks. Let's see if we can do the clerk recorder and the appointment of Tina real quick, and then we'll take up the open space. So if you'll allow me, let's take up item 14A, allowing the clerk recorder to close the clerk's office on the last two days of voter registration on the 2016 primary. We usually do this anyway. Is that correct? All right, is there any public comment on this issue? Board comment? It's what we usually do. Any board questions? Motion's in order.
I move to approve the clerk's office to close at 5 p.m. the last 2 days in which voter registration is open for the 2016 primary and general elections.
Motion and a second on the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, we'll take up item 15. Chair will entertain a motion to appoint Tina Peterson to the 911 surcharge. She's the only applicant applying for reappointment. Motion's in order. Supervisor Bagwell.
I move to ratify the city manager's recommendation to reappoint Tina Peterson to the 911 Surcharge Advisory Committee as the local exchange carrier for a term that will expire on December 31st, 2017.
Motion and a second on the motion, discussion. Public comment? I didn't see any. I don't think we really take it on this one anyway. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, now let's take up the open space. Thanks for putting up with us here.
It's still morning. Good morning, Mayor, Supervisors. For the record, Ann Bolin. Looks like I will finish this morning. Yeah. Ann Bollinger, Open Space Administrator. For the record, we are pleased to present our annual activities report for 2015. It was a busy year, quite a few changes, and quite a few successes. Perhaps the most notable one was the land exchange from BLM to Carson City. 55 acres transferred to the city, of which 3,500 are managed by the Open Space Program. Related to that, we had a few changes in staff. I was promoted in late 2014. I hired my replacement last year, and then we hired 2 new staff to help us with those lands, our park ranger position and a part-time caretaker for Silver Saddle Ranch. The activities report is summarized in a couple different categories for you: activities and events, capital improvement projects, land acquisitions, land management, and planning activities and reports. And in the interest of time, I will turn it over to our chairman of the Open Space Advisory Committee, who will highlight a few of our projects last year.
Thank you, Ann. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, appreciate being here.
Appreciate you being here.
Well, we feel like you deserve to at least have a shot at your Open Space Committee once in a while, and we're happy to provide that opportunity. We're very proud of what's happened this year. We've seen a lot of growth. Things are moving in a great direction. This board has been extremely supportive of open space activities, and we just want to say thanks. We really do appreciate that. We've worked hard with a number of partnerships. We have a lot of folks in the community who are actively participating, helping, supporting, having projects, cleanups, all kinds of things, trail building. And it's just really, the community is really supportive of what's happening. And we're beginning to see some things now on the ground, some signage, which you probably noticed, some fencing. We've got a long ways to go, but we've got a hands-on working staff now, which I think is really, really good. Partnerships have been a big factor for us. The other thing is we've been pretty successful with grants and finding supporters and people to help share in the cost of things. So, the Ash Kings Canyon Trail, you've heard about, a lot of publicity on that. Eagle Valley Creek Trail segment is pretty much, we've got the bridge connected, and that's a big, if you've ever done that loop, it really, really makes a nice loop for walking or jogging or bicycles or horses or whatever. Waterfowl Trail, we've got have a nice trailhead up there. We will be coming forward with a significant grant request through the Southern Nevada Land Management, SNPLMA, jointly with the Parks and Recreation Commission. We're coordinating so that we have one grant request that both entities recommend so that we don't have competing requests. We're very excited about the potential to really get some development going in some of our new open space areas. So without belaboring it, I'm happy to answer questions. I appreciate your patience, and we're certainly willing to take as much of your time as you want, but I realize it's been a long morning, and so I'll leave it at that.
We appreciate that, but don't worry. I don't want you to think, and I think I speak for all of us up here, I don't want any of you to think that, if we're moving kind of fast, it's not because we don't know and value what the open space program and the committee does for us. It's a huge deal for this community. It's a huge deal. And I think just to put it, cross that T and dot that I, when I spoke about what's going on in the city, I personally mentioned that the city's approval of a quarter-cent tax in 1996 is probably the second biggest thing that I think this community's had in the last 50 years. The first being the consolidation. So it's a big deal. So didn't mean to take your time, but I want you guys to know that it's important. And I think we speak for all of us up here then.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Mr. Mayor. And as I say, the board has been absolutely supportive. We know where to find you if we have questions, and you know where to find us. And we're just proud to be a part of one of the many things I think that's going very well in Carson City. It's so easy to dwell on the negative, but we're really proud of what we're doing. We have a good committee. We have one new member who was appointed here earlier in the year. Jerry Massad will take the place of Howard Riedel. Howard decided not to apply for reappointment. We're anxious to get Jerry onto the committee and break him in, so to speak. So I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Let us know how that works out, will you?
Yeah.
Supervisor Abott, go.
Question I have is with the park ranger that you have now, are you having ongoing discussions about interface with the sheriff's office? Because he can't carry a gun, the park ranger cannot, but the sheriff's department does, and you have a lot of remote open space. So just explain how that's, what's going on there.
About a week or two ago, we actually did have a meeting, our department, with the sheriff's office. Kenny Furlong was there, Ken Sandage, Under Sheriff Steve Albertson, to have that specific discussion. What exactly is the role of our park ranger? What does he carry? And we have found out many of the deputies don't realize they're non-commissioned. So that is the first education and awareness. We need to work with the sheriff's department. So I left that meeting with some of the homework, some of these things that I need to provide to them. Our park rangers do carry a taser. They do carry pepper spray and one of the protective sticks, so they are protected out there. Some of the other conversations we still need to carry on. At what point do they call the sheriff's office for backup? If there's drugs, our park rangers, that's a criminal activity, our park rangers will not get involved with drugs. There are concerns about the backcountry, about folks with guns, and particularly shooting in Carson River Canyon. So we've been starting that education campaign of placing signs that shooting is not allowed, and it's an education campaign. So we are having those active talks with the sheriff's office.
How are we doing in that area, speaking about enforcement, behind the college and up west of the college? I mean, I get complaints a lot about people being disruptive there, either running over pedestrians with their motorbikes or whatever. I mean, how are we doing up there?
The area behind the college is one of those challenging areas of land ownership for us, because there is Carson City land, there's college land, and there's state land. And so the paved V&T pathway and VC Canyon itself, the drainage, is the only area that is Carson City. The land, the flat area behind the college up to the observatory is actually college land, and they do have a plan to eventually build out if they have the funds. And then the area behind that up to Timberline is state lands, school trust more specifically, which they're holding on to until a point they can sell for the highest and best use. And that question did come up with the sheriff's office. What do we do about dirt bikes? And I don't know state lands and what their how they want to manage those lands. The sheriff's office is concerned enough right now that we can't manage all the activity on ours. Why should we go out and try? How can we manage that activity on state lands? So unfortunately, it's one of those checkerboard patterns of land ownership right now. But it's a conversation I want to have with WNC and how do they want activities managed on their lands.
Is there signage up there?
On the pathway,
pathway.
and then the drainage there is. It does
And the
say no
drainage
motor
area.
vehicles, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks. Any other questions? The open space? Bruce, anything?
No, thank you very much.
All right. Anybody, any public want to weigh in on this stuff? Anybody? Motion's in order.
I move to approve the Open Space Advisory Committee's annual report for 2015.
Motion and a second on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thanks. Please take
Thank you
back
very
our
much.
comments to your committee.
We
Thanks.
certainly will.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we're now on, let me see where we are here. 16, is that where we are? Okay, non-action items. Board members, who wants to go? Anybody? Go.
So I'd like for a future agenda item, the review of the resolution that we had for the Utility Finance Oversight Committee to ensure they have enough authority to review the projects. Maybe that can just be included with their April report and ask them if they have enough authority. We could review that. I'd like to discuss whether we want to do a letter supporting Congressman Amity's discussion at our last meeting on HR 2324, the Small Lands Tract Conveyance Act. So I'd like to see if we want to do a letter of support there. And then I'd like to have a future agenda item to discuss the proposed impact fees that we might start charging developments. Thank you.
Anybody else? Jim, go.
From the Board of Supervisors minutes of the meeting from January 21st, page 12, it says, Mayor Kroll requested a report of the condition of the roadway in front of Mr. McGarth's house and the expenditure by ward. Just following up and seeing if we have that information available yet. Also, I did meet with staff on the street, and I asked for an itemized recording or budget of how it's spent and in what manner it's spent on such as snow removal, street sweeping, and so forth, and that will be coming shortly, I've been told. So I would like to address an agenda, as Ms. Bagwell mentioned, she wanted an agenda items. I bring to the board's attention, which I'm sure everyone saw, the commentary by Paul McGarth in the February 28th Nevada appeal, where he's asking that the board consider developing an agenda item to develop the planned use of funds already being collected to bring Ward 4 streets and storm drains into acceptable industry standards, and take action to correct the 2 decades of misuse road tax by Regional Transportation Commission and the failing to comply with the original intent of the law, and to conduct an audit to account for the nickel gas tax. He's asking that I ask board members if they would second that motion. I would also ask that city staff look at recycling programs from the gentlemen that were just here today that we can bring to our landfill. I would like to comment and praise city staff for a meeting they had regarding flood management. They ran through the whole procedure of how and what we do as a city community, and I would encourage city staff to think about presenting these types of agenda items maybe in the future at the board level so the community could have the access to this information, or making short videos and posting those on our website. I would like some assistance in how issuance of special event permits are granted and how the scheduling of these events take place. And I bring to the table, or to the discussion, I'm sorry, the bike event that's coming here, which I think is fabulous, but it also moved the calendar date of the Taste of Downtown, from my understanding. And I'd like to see how everything is, how events are issued or granted the permit, and how the calendar is moved to accommodate one or the other, and who makes these decisions. Also, there's a lot of concerns from a lot of people at these events about the insurance that is required. So if we could get that information, that would be helpful. I think also today, we have this meeting that's taking place on the downtown pre-construction meeting today at 3 o'clock. And if you're able to attend, I think that'd be great. And that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else got anything? March 11th at noon, there'll be a 100th anniversary of the USS Nevada BB-36 celebration. You're all invited to come down. We're going to have Charles Seehee, who's one of the survivors that served on the Pearl Harbor survivor that served on the USS Nevada. He'll be here again. He was here before. The governor will be here speaking. It's supposed to be a very good event. Okay. Anybody else got anything? Are we ready to be in recess until 1:30? Let's see, then, are we taking up at 1:30 then redevelopment? So we'll be in recess until after redevelopment.